I've got 2 words for you. Mission accomplished. We're going to get into it right now on the Brother and the Man Show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this very special edition of the Brother and the Man Show. We've got guests, we've got opinions, we've got celebration, and we got American pride once again. No longer do you have to travel to a foreign country and say, no, I'm not from the United States, even though my accent is good. I'm actually from Algeria. You don't have to do that anymore, people. This is it. The moment we've been waiting for. Mission accomplished. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing good. How are you, Pierre? Seems like today's our lucky day. November 7th.
2020. You can keep going.
2020. Well, I'm distracted. I'm doing production shit behind the scenes. So, you keep talking and stuff. Who are our guests?
We got guests. We got guests that have been here before, but one that's an old favorite, even though he's not old. We've got Weffy. He's in the house. Say what's up, man.
How's it going?
Going pretty good. We're disappointed that you couldn't convince your lovely wife to make history on the same night that Kamala Harris did. We've never had a woman on the show, just like we've never had like a woman vice president. She could have made history, but once she found out that Andy's involved, she was like, "No, I'm good."
I tried real hard because she's way smarter than me, but she said no. So I'll keep working on it.
We've also got Jason. He is back. Did such a wonderful job last time, and so welcome back, man. How have you been?
Been good, man. Just hanging in there, man. We did it, man. I don't even know how to feel today. I done seen so many ads today that made me tear up and cry. Speeches and stuff. I'm all emotional all day.
So you do have that Van Jones look going.
Oh my God! Van Jones look. Patches in full effect.
The man's been all excited.
To set the context for future viewers, today is Saturday, November 7th, 2020. We voted on Tuesday, and we've all waited through all kinds of extended counts and mail counts and all that stuff. Everybody knows what this is. Historically, we're live. But today, the press has decided that Pennsylvania is too far gone. It's past the recount even. Joe Biden has won the state. In so doing, he is defanged the other guy. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. Probably, 46? But I have this theory that Trump is going to bail and we're going to have a President Pence for a few weeks. But in any case, we're going to get back to a presidential president. And we, all of us, have been opposed to the idea of Donald Trump being president. And it's been a theme of this show. So this is a celebration for us. And so we're going to just talk about that tonight. I think that's the meat and potatoes of this particular episode. And what do we think?
Totally agree with that. So I will let our guests go first. Since we hear from what are we drinking? Oh, that's right. I'm so excited to get into it. What are we drinking? You go first, man.
I got Bacardi.
What?
I only have a little bit of it left. That's good stuff from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico
I
voted.
Didn't say it was bad.
151. Puerto Rico voted on Tuesday to become, if they're allowed, the 51st state of the United States.
You just seem like a beer, but you just seem like an Irish beer type of person.
That's racist.
You drinking Bacardi?
It's racist.
I never even seen you drink rum.
Cuba Libre.
Oh, okay, got you. I am having, in honor of Joe Biden, the next president of the United States, I'm having Gentleman Jack, because it's not Gentleman Joe, but it's as close as you're going to get to it. So
you're not going to drink
Gentleman
Irish
Jack.
whiskey?
I like that.
I'm not drinking Irish whiskey.
Irish.
No, not.
Catholic.
I've had a lot of Irish whiskey. It's not that good, but so I decided to have like the Gentleman Jack.
Jameson is awesome.
It's all right, but have you had Irish proper number 12 from Conor McGregor? That's actually not too bad. It's
what is it with you and this fetish
Pick a fight with an old man.
for celebrity liquor?
Some of it is actually pretty good, and then some of it's
it
not very
isn't.
good.
Speaking of celebrity liquor, rocking the Deadpool special over
Look
here.
at
We got
that
the aviation going.
aviation gin. That's what I had last
That's
week.
my
That is
favorite.
good stuff.
That's my
Good
favorite.
Really?
stuff.
Somebody bought me that.
That's good stuff. You had it yet?
Nah, you know, I haven't.
Jason, are you drinking milk?
What do you
I
have?
am
tonight?
drinking. I'm drinking something, but it's not alcohol as always. I'm drinking a no label Carl's Jr. Coca-Cola.
Keep it California.
America.
All right,
Well,
fair enough.
awesome.
All right, so go ahead, Pierre.
We've gotten into what we're drinking. We're going to get into the show. We're going to talk about, I guess, how we're feeling. We're kind of just going to freeform tonight. How we're feeling, what this means going forward. That's pretty much what the show is. We may get into any other type of topic, but I think it's probably all just going to be the aftermath of this election for this show.
Yeah, so the press has called it the world. The response from world leaders has been amazing. You've had the leader of every country congratulate Vice President Harris elect and Vice President elect Biden. And I went through the list and it was amazing. And you've had one Republican leader, Mitt Romney, who I continue to be a fan of, also congratulate. The rest of these guys can't seem to get good with the reality check that is outside. It's like Hitler in his bunker. I don't like to equate people to Nazis. I think that's done far too freely, but I keep thinking of the military history, and I keep thinking of campaigns that are over and people that knew they were over and surrendered for the sake of their troops. This guy doesn't seem to have it in him, but we're giving too much credit to the loser. We should be talking about the winner. So,
well,
Joe
you
Biden,
knew he was going to do that, though. You knew this is how he was going to act.
this is what I've been talking about for the last month that I've been concerned about.
But just because he doesn't want to act presidential and be gracious and concede, it doesn't mean he's not getting out of the house on January 20th, 2021. And even if he tries to stay, here's what's going to happen. The Secret Service is going to physically pick him up. He's got Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. They're going to physically pick him up and move his big ass out of the office. I mean, me and my wife were having this conversation, and that's the same thing I told her. I was like, he can act out of pocket all he wants. January 20th, 2021, they will pick him up physically if they have to and get him out of the office.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to concede. He just
Biden
needs to
said
leave.
that they're perfectly capable of removing trespassers from the White House. Part of me is like, I don't want that to happen because I don't want the drama. Part of me is concerned that if he's gone that far at that late point, what does he do in the meantime? What kind of executive orders does he try to snap off? What kind of pardons is he going to throw down? What kind of shit is he going to try to burn down on the way out? But part of me would love to see him get carried out in handcuffs or on a trundle or whatever. We would all love to see that. The hubris of this guy is nuts.
No,
I think
it is insane. Go ahead.
No, I think it's gonna be more of a thing where I think he's gonna fight for maybe a week or two, and then he's gonna kind of like you were alluding to, Andy. He's basically gonna write off, call it a sham, get his book deal, make money off of the deal, and just kind of be gone is what I'm expecting. I think we're gonna get a lot of noise for a week or two, and then hopefully it'll all just be on Fox News after that.
He's basically he's got two roads, right? He can throw up lawsuits and he can throw lawyers at everything, but he doesn't have in 2020, they argued a point of procedure in Miami-Dade County and Broward County, and they descended with armies of lawyers on a very specific strategy, and they argued for a month. He's got to, that was a very narrow focus and a very well-developed team. They have to figure out how to fight on multiple fronts, and they have no lawyers. No lawyers are taking up their cause. The lawyers that they do have are a shit show. These guys had a press conference at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia this morning. The only problem was that when they made the reservation at the Four Seasons, it was at Four Seasons Landscaping, and they were too stupid to even cancel it. They went ahead and had it at the landscaping while the press was saying that they'd lost the election. These guys are a circus, and the circus is not going to deliver on very many lawsuits. There's no evidence for their arguments. There's no point of procedure to argue against. They could request recounts. There should be one in Atlanta. It's so close in Georgia. But I don't think they're going to get a recount in Pennsylvania. They're not likely to get a recount in Wisconsin. And if they do get those recounts, which will take a week or so, the recounts are not going to change. Recounts historically don't change. You're talking about a plus or minus of 4 figures, not 6 figures. So the election's going to hold. Since he's been announced the nominee, he's since been projected to have won Nevada this afternoon. Arizona's coming. Georgia is likely his. There are more votes coming from spoiled ballots and military ballots. Those are likely to push him a little further over the top. It's done. And there's not going to be much that he can do about it, short of just outright refusing to play ball, at which point Pierre's scenario of the Secret Service comes into play and we all giggle. So it's over. It is over. Unless some governor tries to appoint an alternative set of electors, which has never happened. It wouldn't stand up. And I don't think that would happen. People are, even if they're corrupt to that point, they know that they have to get their bread buttered the next day. They've got to exist in Joe Biden's universe for at least 4 years. So some Republican governor's not got to shoot himself in the face unless he's really a true believer. And I guess that could happen, but not enough to swing the election. So, I think the scenario where he sees all of that coming and realizes that his goose is cooked, he can become a martyr. He's got to maintain his brand, and he can try to come back and run in 4 years. To do all of those things, he's got to remain a victim. So he quits. He calls it corrupt. You stole the election. Fuck you, America. I'll be back for my America in 4 years, or my daughter will be. I resign the presidency. Let Mike Pence take care of you guys. And that's the best scenario for everybody. He can go do talk shows. We can get him out of the way and avoid the drama. I think that's actually fairly likely.
See, I'm with you halfway on that. I think the fuck you, America, I'm gone. I think that happens, but I don't think he comes back in 4 years. I think he goes and plays golf and enjoys what money he says he has. We'll see. But
I think the situation is there that he could, because Joe Biden 78, Trump is 74. 4 years, Trump is going to be 74, and he might look at it like, well, I can run in 4 years. He did it before. I can come back. The issue, though, I think is going to be at play is I foresee a lot of lawsuits. Trump's going to have some legal issues that I think that are going to come up that are going to wear on him. They're going to be so many. He pissed off so many people as well, to where it's like, you ain't going to have the energy to run in 4 years. So who do the Republicans run? We don't know. That's what we get into probably down the road in a few shows or in a year or however long we're going to do this. But for the immediate future, for Trump, he's going away and he's not going to jail, at least not yet. And I don't think he will. But I think there's more embarrassment on the horizon for him than he can try to play the victim, but eventually he's going to have to go away. Totally.
Maybe we finally get that Stormy Daniels tape.
Nah, I don't think Trump's whiteness will allow him to go to jail, first and foremost. But I am with all the petty when it comes to him being dragged outside of the White House, first and foremost. I just want you to know I would love to see it. I'll make a documentary on it. I'll record it, put it on 3 different DVRs in my home. I don't care. I will take it to work and broadcast it on Facebook over and over again. I love the idea of him being dragged out of the White House. In terms of him being what he's going to do, is if he's going to leave, just leave loudly or quietly. I think that he's too narcissistic to do that. I think that he's going to tweet until the very end. He's going to be on the helicopter on January 20th, tweeting still. And I mean, it's just it's really what we've already seen. And so, I don't think that we're going to be disappointed in him
let's be clear. I don't think that he's going to ever stop tweeting. I think that he's got an entire livelihood ahead of him over the next 4 years, which Pierre points out he's going to probably need. And he's going to do that from Fox News. He's going to write books. He's going to lecture. He's going to be the poster child for the disloyal opposition. And there's a cult of personality that's built around him. And he's going to absolutely play up to that. It's absolutely his narcissism made manifest. I don't think he'll be president on January 29th. I don't think he's going to leave nicely. And I don't think he's going to want to leave under guard. So I think that he's going to pick the only exit path he has, which is bail, and then go tweet from that perspective. And I don't know that for a fact. I'm calling a shot because if it happens, I'll look good. I mean, I think it's 50-50, but I think it's not unheard of. I don't think it's unreasonable at all. And I didn't come up with a concept, but I'm a true believer that it could happen.
You don't think that makes him look worse though?
in the eyes of his people? And that's the point? No, not at all. Because if he gives up and he says, screw you guys, and he has a temper tantrum, then he looks weak. But if he says, screw you guys, you did this to me and I'm not going to take it. So since you're going to steal it from me, I'll be back in 4 years, or my daughter will be, if I'm too old. We will be back and we will be bad. Yeah, absolutely. I think that people eat that shit up. And I think that's the only play he's got.
Yeah, I have actually seen rumors on Twitter about him starting like some Trump TV or Trump news thing and taking Hannity with him, and
right,
like trying to compete with Fox News, because Fox News basically turned on him the past couple of days.
Right.
In his opinion, I was like,
the first time Fox News does his job, they get bad at him.
but keep in mind there were 70 million people that voted for this cat, so we have to consider that. Let's say if you give 30% of those are just your everyday KKK member, and then you have the other people who like economy and stuff like that, such as Andy, so like, so then you have those people who might be willing to even, hey, I was okay with Trump when he was in office. Let's watch his little TV program and see what he said, and then Hannity's gonna get up there and go crazy like Hannity does, and then what's the other guy's name? That does the ludicrous stuff up there on Fox News. That's right along.
Oh.
He's like 2 steps below Hannity.
Oh, Lou Dobbs.
Sounds like you're well prepared.
And they might even bring Bill O'Brien.
That's right. He's out there.
They might even bring him back. Bill O'Reilly back. They might even bring Bill O'Reilly back to spill some ludicrous stuff like, slaves were pretty happy when they built the White House. They had homes and everything like that.
I saw that. I saw a textbook from like 100 years ago where they said that slaves were happy. They showed a slave wearing a top hat, shaking a hand. It was amazing. It was on Twitter, and I'm like, holy shit.
I saw a tweet that went out today, and somebody said something that was very profound. That said, now we can get back to regular racism.
Right.
And I was like, exactly.
So that textbook you just mentioned, that was one of the things that terrified me. That executive, this is a topic for another show, but that the executive order he's talking about pushing through about a more patriotic curriculum for our public schools. That's immediately what I thought of, is stuff like that.
Well, the good news is that in the next half decade, we don't have to worry about that. At minimum, we get 4 years. All things being equal, and he may be back. You're right, Jason. 71 million people did vote for this guy. Mm-hmm. Considering 75 million people voted for Joe, that's 150-ish million people. We have a population of 330, and that includes kids. So you shave off 20% that can't ever vote in any given election. We had a very large turnout. More than half of the people that could vote did, and half of those people are very disappointed tonight. And I think they will be back.
And I think what you saw was, and we talked about this on the show, especially the last one when we gave our predictions. What we saw was Trump was a victim of very bad timing. And here's where I'm going to admit something. And, he can come on the show. We meant to have him on the show. 4 years ago, around this time at the so-called Pokergate, I did think Trump was going to be reelected because I didn't see a plan that the Democrats had on the horizon to where it's like, God damn, this guy's going to get reelected. And so I might as well get used to having this guy for 8 years. How am I going to survive 8 years? Because he's going to get reelected. But at
the time, Joe said he wasn't going to run.
A big uprising in the United States. Right. He said he wasn't going to run. And what it took was a big uprising, and it took a global pandemic. And then on top of that, it took something to show Trump being as unqualified as he was. He was the worst president to have for this type of emergency that happened on our country with COVID. Brothers still getting shot. He handled both of those things so poorly that I think it galvanized his base to get out there and even more people to go vote. But what I said on the last show was these protests that we saw was more than just about Black Lives Matter. It was about the frustration in the United States with what our global standing was, how our president was acting, the state of this country, to where I think people banded together and said, look, and they kind of agree with you, Andy. Priority number one is to get this guy out of office, and we'll worry about whatever we need to do later on. We can't have that representing us in this country and on this national stage. And so to counteract what was going to vote for Trump, because they knew what was coming. And so I think all of that hit, and it took all of that to show how unqualified Trump was to get him out of office. Otherwise, he was going to walk to re-election.
Yeah, this victory has a lot of fathers, you know, and again, this is a future episode, but I mean, very clearly, both parties have a real problem going forward. The Democratic Party is split 6 different ways, and you can read some of that up on the results that did and didn't show up on Tuesday. Moderate white people that were supposed to be appalled at Donald Trump didn't show up as much as they should. I did the best I could, but apparently a lot of my peers didn't show up like they should. And Cuban Americans in South Florida walked away from the idea of communism. Claire McCaskill in Missouri pointed out that the extremes of the party were not, well appreciated by moderates and was attacked. AOC is attacking the Lincoln Project because they didn't deliver and their money could have been used for better purposes. The left and the right, black versus white, young versus old, it's all being figured out. And Joe was the default anti-Trump candidate. So, we got rid of the guy and we went with the one guy that had the most appeal, and hopefully he does some great things. He's got experience. He's well respected, but they have a real problem trying to figure out what they're going to do. The good news is that if Joe's healthy, they put that question off for 8 years and he's got plenty of time to heal that division and kind of come up with a new consensus, a new core to be built. But, it's a challenge if he falls down. And then on the right, at the same time, you've got people that don't like Trump. You got people that do like Trump, and finding a Republican. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, if there had been some other personality, and I use Mark Cuban as a concept, I don't think that Joe Biden would have won. All other things being equal. If Donald Trump had said, you know what, people don't like me, but I don't want to give up the brand. Let me step aside and nominate this other guy who agrees with all of my policies, and had annotated who that guy was, anointed him, I think that those same people would have shown up, and there would have been enough people that would have been peeled off of the Democrats to go to them. The problem is that the cult of personality that is Trump is a real problem, because as long as Trump or Trumpism is the leadership on the right, I think there's going to be huge counter votes against him. Both parties have been pushed to the extreme. Both parties have a problem trying to figure out what they're going to be in the future, and people in the middle, most of us, have to try to determine which of the two flavors we want to vote for. Now that's 8 years from now, but we don't know what that looks like.
I actually,
it is a good conversation to have.
I tend to agree with you on that in a sense, because up until probably Thursday, I still thought Trump was going to win. I'm not going to lie. I thought that they were when I saw him take Michigan, I was like, obviously, I think it's going to turn down because of the mail-in vote thing. But when I was looking at the results on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, I was like, Biden is getting his butt whooped.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy how this is happening. And while the left may not have a concrete plan, I think that, like you said, this was the best resolution for this country. Because can you imagine 4 more years of him selling the name of the United States the way he has, and the way, like, especially when you take into consideration that how quickly the foreign leaders came to the response when the election was called, and was like, hey, ready to work with you, President-elect Biden, ready to work with you, Prime Minister Boris, ready to work with you. Everybody was like, yo, we're ready to do this. We're ready to make the United States, get back to where we were, because obviously Trump pulled out of a lot of things, like the Paris thing, and he pulled out of so many things and so many different agreements, and added tariffs to China, things like that he alienated the United States from people. And so for him to be out of there, everybody's like, okay, now we can deal with the people who we really want to deal with and get back to business as usual.
I agree.
His policies were oriented towards business, and some people agree with those things, but he just, again, I like to say this, he just wasn't a good person, and they didn't care for that portion of it.
I agree with that 100%. George W. Bush, or whichever. George W. Bush. Yeah, George W. Bush, number 43, was, he had some failings. He made some major mistakes. He got us into Iraq when we shouldn't have, and rightfully so. That's a failing on his part. But he was qualified to a certain degree, and he tried, and he got better. Barack Obama was wildly unqualified to be president, in my respect, except for the fact that he was a great domestic leader and had vision, was articulate and intelligent, but he didn't have the experience to be a great president day one. Most people don't. He got better over time. This guy is uniquely disqualified to hold this position. He's just wildly terrible. And it's a combination of having no reservation about using the power of the office, where most other people, kind of play by the rules. He's like, I'll do whatever I can, whatever I need. And then not having a concept, even day to day, what those things are, why he's going to do them. He single-handedly picked a trade war with China that he lost. He abandoned the Kurds. Those are two things that stick in my head. But there was something every other week that this guy did, and most of them blew up in his face. He alienated our allies, and he made butt sex with our enemies in some cases. The guy was horrible. And I think enough people recognize that. But there's this hardcore people, a group of people who they're racist, they're God-fearing, their only agenda are domestic values based upon religious beliefs, moral beliefs, that aren't good with the progressive movement. They aren't good with socialized medicine. They aren't good with the idea of gays being in the military. And they just can't get good with the current Democratic Party, let alone an advancing progressive agenda that might take it way further, a la Bernie and AOC. So they are going to react in a contrary way. And those people are not going anywhere, and they have to be dealt with. The best case scenario is for Joe Biden to actually deliver on some good things and not delve too deeply into some extremely bad things, and bring some of those people around, and or just to tone down the hyperbole to such a degree that we get back to civil discourse. I don't think those things are going to happen, but maybe.
I think he's got a good shot. Because I think the right has enough of a black eye right now, for lack of a better term, that they're going to have to play ball a little bit. If he puts anything forward that's, for lack of a better term, just a good idea, if they try to just play partisan politics and block it just because it's not coming from their side, I think they're going to be in even more trouble the next time an election runs around. So I think to some extent they kind of have to play ball. On the other side of that, if Joe doesn't run again in 4 years and it's someone like Elizabeth Warren comes up, I think the Democrats are out for a good 8.
No. One of the best things that's happened.
I'll say this.
If go ahead, Pierre.
I was going to say, I think, and not to inject race into this, but we're going to do it because that's what we do on the show. I think Joe Biden has a better chance of having that compromise and people working with him because he is a white male president now.
Agreed. 100%.
Obama ran into a lot of that, a lot of racial things is what he ran into, even from his own party, to where people didn't necessarily want to take any of his ideas or play ball. And then what happened was, after all the Democrats got kicked out, 2010, and then the Republicans took over, well, finally that eventually led to Trump getting elected. And so all these years later, then the Democrats want to be like, well, you didn't play ball with Obama, so we're not going to play ball with you, which was, so you were doing reactionary politics. I think that by having a white male president now, especially someone like Joe Biden, okay, now we can compromise. We got to give a little bit and we got to take a little bit. I think you're going to see a little bit of that now.
I actually agree with that. I also think that we're not really allowed to talk bad about Obama because he's in black people's homes. He's right next to the Last Supper, Jesus, and Martin Luther King in portraits. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, but I mean, we should be able to talk about the things that he may have, dropped the ball on, because his administration wasn't perfect.
Drones?
No administration. I mean, say that there were things that people wanted him to do, but obviously his hands were tied behind his back for the most part throughout the administration. But there were also black people, from a black standpoint, black people didn't think that he did enough but we had to understand that he couldn't do certain things just because he was black, or, like that. It just isn't in good good taste to do some things, right? To create a quote unquote black agenda for strictly black people and then alienate the other side of the country too. You know, he couldn't do that. So
no, you're absolutely correct. He had to be a president for all people. He had to be less black than any other president has ever had to be. I get your point for sure.
Especially as the first one, especially as the very first black person. Because when you are the first black person to do anything, you cannot be, you know, that quote unquote angry one, you know, like Pierre is and Brian came on. You can't do that. Like, you can't be militant like this guy and then come up and expect the guy behind you to get anything done. It's never going to happen that way.
And Kamala Harris is going to have the same problem because she's going to have to tread lightly and not appear as a B word. You know,
where does that come from though? Like, where does that stigma of that come from? Because not even being as a, like, where would, I mean, being as a woman particularly, but then being a black woman or half black woman, however you want to resolve it, she's still going to get the stigma about her that says that's why she laughs all the time. You know, that's why she's always smiling and always laughing, so that she doesn't come across as assuming to a certain crowd of people.
No, I get it. She can't put her hand on her hip and pivot her head and say, She has to be Claire Huxtable. I get it. She has to be benign and diplomatic and always positive. I get that. Because if I'm an asshole, I'm called an asshole. But if I'm female and I'm an asshole, I'm called a bitch. And it's not fair. But, you know, the good news is that she's got the opportunity to clear that away and blaze that trail so that the woman that comes behind her, the next black president, can come and say, look, I'm black. I'm going to take care of black people. Not because I'm only black. I'm not going to sell the country out and just set up black people, but because black people need to be represented and no one's been able to do it before. And I'm going to fix that because I'm part of it, you know, where Obama couldn't do that. I get that. It's baby steps. It always has been in our pursuit of that theoretical most perfect union, which obviously we have a far distance to go, but we do make progress. And sometimes the first person has to come in and say, look at me and thank you for allowing me to be the first massa. And I'm going to smile, and that's it. And that's the only progress that they can theoretically make. It's unfortunate. It's terrible, but it is what it is. And the good news is that we seem to be moving forward quickly. We have a second black person in high office. We have our first female. The idea of those things is not, for most right-thinking people, provocative anymore. I think it's very likely that in the next couple of months, you're going to have your first gay person in the administration. If Pete Buttigieg is not the Secretary of Defense, I'll be shocked. 20 years ago, you couldn't have gays in the military. Now you're going to have a gay guy you could have a gay guy in charge of the military. So we make progress, and that's worth noting.
I think the transition is going to be easier with Joe Biden being the president and Kamala being the vice president, in the sense that a lot of people out there are going to say, well, they're more likely to, if Joe Biden comes out, this would benefit him, right? If he came out and said, okay, I see that the country's divided. We need to take care of these black people, right? We need to do something immediately in reference to this, right? And then with Kamala behind him, if Kamala would have did it as president, then like, no, that's never going to happen. But with Joe Biden as a white man doing it first, the next president who happens to be black will possibly get it done. Will be able to get something done as well. A black person can't be the first person to offer black people something, because it's going to be said to be something different.
No,
and I'll
go ahead,
tell you something else on that too. If I was Biden, I would do that the first few months of my presidency. Don't try to do it. Don't do it the last few months of your presidency, because number one, there's going to be a lot of people that remember that's going to be the last thing that they remember. Well, I'm going to vote against that. You're giving those Negro stuff, right? No one wants that. So take care of that shit early, so that way it's out of sight, out of mind, and then you can start to do for the rest of the country. Because let's face it, you're going to have to do something now. Like what we talked about on the show you were on, Jason, and what we told you, Andy, was black folks get people elected. And what that means is, if we stay home and you decide not to exhort us and we stay home, you're not getting elected. The other guy's getting elected.
Look,
if you say what we're going to do, we're going to rise up against Trump, you get elected. And so
let's
Democrats are going to have to deliver. And I'm not Van Jones. I'm not Van Jones and saying like, okay, woo, Joe Biden got elected. I feel better as a parent waking up. I don't know what this dude was smoking, but we'll get on something. We'll get on that later.
He's a little bit in the middle. He's a little bit in the middle. Like,
I didn't understand that at all. I mean, problems don't go away. We still got some things we need to fix in this country. So we need to get to it now. And Democrats are on the clock, and they need to make sure they deliver.
Let me be the black Van Jones talking today.
You look like Van Jones.
And say exactly. Since I look like Van Jones, let me be the black Van Jones. No tears here today. I was a little emotional earlier. I will not lie. But and say this: what hurt Trump the most was that, like we said a couple of weeks ago, he had a platinum plan for black people, and he didn't mention it whatsoever. He didn't even say anything about it. Not in a tweet. Not in anything. So that's the thing that will help Biden. Biden can say, you know what your president didn't do. He said that what do you have to lose by voting for me? Well, obviously we didn't have anything to lose or anything to gain because you still didn't do. You did everything everybody else did. Yeah, so Biden can do this and take care of this group of people right now by executive order. Do the same thing, like play the same game that the Republicans play. Play those executive orders. It obviously they can't stand forever, but play the same game. Sometimes you got to play that same game and say, "Hey, I'm taking care of these black people right now. We're doing this right now." There's not going to be a commission where there's 25 years in the future. We'll discuss it for 25 years and studying it. All this studying is doing nothing for black people. If Joe Biden needs to do something immediately, or else there will not be another 4 years for Democrats because black people are already on the fence. They're already on the fence. They're ready to move.
Here's the benefit of here's the good thing that he has. Meaning Vice President-elect Joe Biden. He's got some gifts and he's got some shade or some cover that he can work under. Number one, he doesn't have to do it immediately because there's no more voting for 2 years. So he's got some time to make a positive change. Number one. Number two, historically speaking, he doesn't have to look. He's not going to set up $1 trillion in reparations. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic, and that's not what anybody's looking for. And I can see Pierre thinking. But my point is that he's not going to have to do something extreme. The benefit he has is he has Kamala Harris, and she's extremely popular. Just her existence is popular. She's more popular with African Americans, as near as I can tell from looking at Black Twitter, than she was 3 months ago when she was nominated. The idea that she was nominated at the time was relatively unpopular, but the demographic made manifest that she is, unfortunately, is something that has won people over, and people are looking for a positive, and her being on stage was a positive tonight. So I think people are willing to give that a chance. Number one. Number two, the fact is that the other guy did lay out a platinum plan, and the other guy did meet with people like Cube and had that conversation, which not only allows, it forces Joe, but it allows him to say, I got to at least do as good as the asshole did, right? So he's going to sit down with Cube now that the election over. He's going to sit down and say, we're going to have to do some stuff. I think there will be a commission, and I think Kamala Harris will be asked to lead that commission. Black people in America are uniquely positioned as victims, more so than gay Americans, more so than women as a general group, more so as any other demographic, more so than ginger Republican, coming from Ireland have been or are. You guys have suffered for better or for worse. And I think that it's time to recognize those things and do some material things. And the other thing that he has benefit of is, I was watching David Axelrod today, and he pointed out that he worked for Obama, but Obama would come in and say, these are the things that I want to get done. And then they would whittle those things down. Joe Biden is a negotiator. He knows Mitch McConnell, and they're going to go behind closed doors, and they're going to make a negotiation and say, what can I get from you? He will get some things that way, and then he will deliver those, and there will be some forward progress. And we'll all be disappointed on the lack of that progress, but it will be something. And I think it will come relatively quickly, and I think it will come very specifically targeted towards your audience, African American audience, African American women, African Americans in general, but African American women especially, delivered for this guy in Detroit, in Cleveland, in Atlanta, in Phoenix, in Las Vegas, in a way that this guy can never ever repay, in Milwaukee. And he has to at least return some minimal dividend on that investment, or you're right, he and the party will be done, and then Mark Cuban will win the next election.
So I think looking forward, I think Kamala has a big opportunity here, especially if she's looking to run in 4 or 8 years, because the main thing against her was her record, and I think she has a big opportunity here to make some changes to kind of go back on her record, for lack of a better term, especially with some judicial reform, if she is leaving some type of coalition or whatever it is, to make her look really good as the next candidate if some changes happen. If not, if nothing happens and then she runs in 4 years, it's going to be the same as the Tulsi debate all over again. She's just going to get roasted.
I'm with you with most things that you say, Andy, except for Kamala being the head of that commission. Only reason being, just like Weffy just said, if she's the head of that commission and nothing happens, it's gonna be like the debate all over again on her. And they're gonna blame her. Black people are gonna blame her, and white people are gonna blame her.
But she's got nowhere to go. She can't hide from that. She's got to lead on that.
Yeah, I think she has to.
Nobody's asking her to hide from it. What I'm saying is they need to get something done in terms of saying, yeah, she's a part of it, but she's not the head of it. Because the black person at the head is the one that, like the way Obama takes blame for certain things, Kamala might as well be the president if that happens. If she gets, she's gonna get all the blame.
I think she needs that though. I think she needs to double down. I think if she doesn't, she has no chance. I think she has to get out ahead of this. And not that her record was a mistake. Think about it what you will, but I think she has to do some damage control there if she wants to run again. I'm going to assume if she's, if she ran this time, she's going to want to run again in 4 or 8 years. But I think if she doesn't, she just has no chance.
I don't.
And Andy, if you think about one of the things we talked about when Mike Shaw was on the show is, I believe it was right when Kamala Harris was announced as the VP nominee with Joe Biden. And the one thing that he kept trying to stress to people was, hey, the Democrats need to earn our vote. And you circle this back to what Jason has said, is that black people are on the fence right now to where they're like, hey, we deliver for you this time. We're tired of you pushing things back. You got to do something. And the reason why something needs to be done, and I don't know if Kamala needs to be the head of it, does she need to say something? Yes, she absolutely does. But the reason why you need to do something is what has always been proven is the things that happened in the civil rights movement end up benefiting. That's why some type of prison reform needs to be done. All these different reforms need to be done. And that's why they need to be worked on immediately, because they're going to be a lot of important things. Like, we still got to deal with this coronavirus, right? We're not out of the woods yet. There is a lot of work that needs to be done that the administration that's in power right now really undone. And, look, I was a person that was like, I don't give a shit about climate change. It's not that I don't care about climate change. I did not think that was one of our biggest agendas, because it's like, hell, we can't even get along with each other in this country. We won't even give the planet a chance to destroy itself, because we're going to destroy each other. So we have so many things that we need to work on that need to get resolved quickly, for better or for worse, because there are going to be even tougher things down the road. We don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. We didn't foresee this whole thing with the coronavirus. We did not. So what is lurking our years that we need to take care of today, that we need to concentrate our efforts on down the road?
Well, we're all agreeing that something's going to have to be done for African Americans, whatever that is. Police reform seems to make sense, and to be something that could be done, reasonably.
Let me speak for Black America right now, to cut you off. The only thing we want
That's the problem with
Is
Black
the-
America is they keep
No.
cutting me off.
That's right, cutting you off because we've been letting you talk all this
Give
time.
it to me, Ice Cube. Come on.
The only thing we want more than anything.
And he got cut off.
What a time to freeze.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm
We're
like,
still 70% of the population. We still have the power.
fair enough, fair enough.
Now,
We
let me tell you what's going to happen.
Mark Zuckerberg came in.
I definitely think that he's gonna say something along the lines of, and I don't know what that is, quite frankly. But I'm waiting to hear it because I want to know what do we want? What do we want? What do we want?
What do we want?
We need to Photoshop something into his mouth. Is what we need to do.
While we wait for his computer to come back, I'm going to take him off the screen because that's really freaking me out a little bit. While we, he's back.
Oh, he's back.
All right, the only thing we want is
Apparently, I think what I was saying was I lost my train of thought because stupid.
You schooled me on what the only thing that Black people want is.
Dude, we just want our rights. That's all we want. This is what we've been promised. I don't want any handouts. All I want is you to leave me alone when I want to start a business instead of you trying to undercut it.
I had to cut him off.
Because when I get pulled over, I don't get blown the fuck away. That's the only thing I want. I want the basic right. I want the basic rights that we have fought for. We have bled on that flag for. That's the only thing we want is for white people, not you, not Weffy, but you know the type that are out there that are always trying to keep a brother down when we don't want to screw with nobody. You keep hearing about the whole thing about the blue collar worker. They're not talking about black men. But if you look at the disenfranchised or not the disenfranchised, the Trump people, the MAGA people, and you look at the blue collar working black men, they're the same goddamn thing, just different skin tone.
Yeah, I you know what? I'm gonna jump on what Pierre said right there. I think. And this is just my personal idea, right? The only thing that can be done in terms of giving Black people what we truly actually need is rewriting the Constitution. I'm not saying the whole thing. But that part that says that all men are created equal means we need to put an addendum, like a little caret sign, and then said, and Black people too. Because that's literally what we want. That's literally what we want. So that nobody can argue the point.
We were supposed to not talk about future policy, but let me ask you this, since we're obviously going to break that rule tonight. Let me ask you this, because this has been one of my concerns. I'll tell you a little story, Joe Biden style, and then it'll set the tone here. When Michael Brown was murdered in North County, whether that was a tragic accident or cold-blooded murder, we can all decide separately. But when he was killed, there was a real concern in my part. I live in St. Louis, that Ferguson was going to burn and that Ferguson was going to collapse. And there's a cycle that happens whereby people see things getting bad and therefore they leave. When they leave, their tax base erodes. And because of the tax base erodes, the schools go down, social services go down. And then people see that and then they decide that they need to leave. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy whereby when there's social unrest on an unregular basis, that the community collapses. And I didn't want to see that. So I went up to Ferguson to try to prop up Black-owned businesses. I needed some tires. I went up there and I was shown to the border by some local people who did not want me up there. All right, because I had the wrong skin tone. That's a straight up story. So here's my question for you, as the angry white man. What you say is absolutely correct. You should be treated exactly the same way I'm treated, and that all people in the United States that are citizens should be treated, and guests as well. And in fact, all humans should be. Great. That's what my father marched for 50 years ago. That's what I was raised to believe. That's what's built into my conscience. Great. What law does Joe Biden pass? Because that's the only thing he can do is write code. What code does he write? That's the question that's going to be asked. What specifically do you want codified to try to make that happen? And that's where Cube and the contract with Black America can come in. But that's what's going to have to be asked, because your goals are wonderful, but they're old. They've done social programs, they've passed laws, and clearly we as a people, as an entire people, seem to have a trouble getting across the finish line on all people being equal. So now the question becomes, what can we do that's different, or what can we do properly that we failed on before to try to move us closer to that ideal? And I'm not saying you're wrong. I just wonder how we actually deliver on that, because that's the question. What does the American Senate full of Mitch McConnell actually do on paper that makes us a little happier?
Were you about to say you people happier?
Well, I was going to say you guys, but
You were
I
about to
wasn't
say
going to say you people, but
You're about to say
it's a fair point.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, I'll give you two examples. One,
and I know the answers, but tell
the
our audience.
The Voting Rights Act, right? The Voting Rights Act. It was torn apart by the Supreme Court.
It was.
That needs to be that they have to reinstate that immediately.
It has to be updated for the modern day.
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Secondly, the Civil Rights Act. Why are we still voting on that every so many years? Those are two things right there.
Okay.
Those are two things that are plausible, that can actually be done. Those two things are very important. The Civil Rights Act still being voted on means, every 25 years, we'll decide if these Negroes actually can vote again. Like if they really have rights. That's not what we want. We want to see it in you guys' Constitution that gets taught to us in the schools that you guys told us to go to. The textbooks that are given to us instead of us having. You don't want us to make our own. You want us to learn quote unquote American history, which is our history too. But we still have to vote on whether or not we're citizens. That's the problem. So you tell me.
So I'm a big fan. I say this. So now that we've got rid of Trump, I'm suddenly the white guy in the room.
Wait a second. You got kicked out.
Upgrade.
I like Chief Justice Roberts, and when the Voting Rights Act was, for lack of a better term, vacated, if you go back and you look at it, they wrote an opinion that said, look, this law is not a general statement. It is a very specific statement that says that there should be observers in this, let's say, in this particularly troubled zip code. We need to have observers to make sure that African Americans and all Americans are able to vote safely, because it's a troubled area. So let's deploy extra police or sheriffs or whatever it is. And the problem with the Voting Rights Act as it was introduced in the 60s is it hadn't been updated. It was wildly out of date. So they were deploying police to a subdivision, a zip code that was now predominantly African American. Meanwhile, other zip codes that needed that same kind of approach were not being serviced. It had not been updated. It was very specific to a certain amount of time, and it had a general philosophy that went with it. And the general philosophy was still believed in, but the specific codification was out of date in many cases. So they vacated it as being impractical and suggested that it needed to be rewritten, updated, and should continue to be looked at on a regular basis. The Congress who writes this code lacks the fucking balls, Republicans, to do what is right. The problem is not the Supreme Court. The problem is the Congress and the administration not doing what needs to be done. And those are the type of things that Joe Biden can probably move on. So I agree with you. Updating the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, embracing a modern version of the Equal Rights Amendment. Those are all things that could be done by an administration that would not be radically provocative. They would just be updating common sense. The reason that the Civil Rights Act should be visited on a regular basis is because it needs to be updated on a regular basis to reflect the reality that is today.
Or you could just stand by the Bill of Rights that says all men were created equal.
Well,
let's not go too crazy here now.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly what you said. Don't go too crazy, but that sounds like this completely radical idea.
No, but I think it's an impotent idea, and then I hope you don't take that the wrong way.
No,
I think that if let's say that they introduced a non-binding resolution that says, I mean, let's say they did literally that. The preamble of the Constitution should apply to all citizens, and that includes a laundry list of all of the following demographics. And it passed 100 to 0, and was signed in, and everybody clapped. Wonderful. What does that change? It changes nothing. The problem is that we have to make practical changes because clearly good intentions. Look, I'm shocked. I've said this to Pierre many a time. We both were raised in military families. We were raised right. So the idea that part of the problem with white America, part of the problem with me right now is it's taken me about 10 years to get on board with the idea that racism is prevalent in society because it doesn't exist. I was raised in the military, and it's very hard for me to get on board with the idea that what I see out there is real. It's just not something that I want to see as being real. I was raised with all kinds of people, and we were all equals working together. My dad went to work with Derek Chambers' dad, and it was black people and white people and Filipino people all working together. And women had positions of power, and of course women are equal, and of course you are my equal. So it's built into me, and it's so. The KKK was a joke in the 70s. It was something that was in a Richard Pryor movie as a comedy prop. Right? It wasn't real anymore. It had been done away with, except obviously it is real. So the idea that we have to you've got to do practical steps, because the idea that it's going to go away if we all kumbaya and hold hands and have good wishes for each other clearly is not the case. 71 million people voted for this guy. If a third of those people believe that the people in Charlotte that murdered a woman because she didn't want to see Confederate statues celebrated were good people, then we have a real problem in this country, and we've got to make practical steps to try to isolate those people and to protect the rights of your people.
I think that one of the Saturday Night Live cast members, Michael Che, he does the weekly review, right?
Weekly update.
Weekly update. He had a comedy special.
Michael Che and Mrs. Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. he had a comedy special, and he said, what black people are asking for is, we aren't asking for all the rights, we're just asking for civility, civil rights. That's and I think that there's this misnomer out there that black people are that we're trying to end racism. We could care less if racism actually ends, because we know it's not gonna. That ship has sailed, right? What we're asking for is common sense, basic civility. That's all we're asking for. We're not, into let's say a third of those 71 million people doesn't believe, like I grew up in a military family too, and I saw all different races and cultures, and so racism was a little bit difficult for me to digest until I visited Texas, and that woman, clutched her purse when she sat beside me, or when I sat down beside her, or when, I was playing basketball with my friends at 12 years old and somebody drove down the street yelling the N-word, so it's not like, but as a Southerner, as Midwesterners, as you are, as a black Midwesterner, as Pierre is, racism honestly is probably at the bottom of the list of things that really bother him. Don't get me wrong, it's bothersome and troublesome at that, but this is why we're saying we're not asking for, it's not a lot that we're asking for. These are things that Joe Biden can actually, or the Democratic Party, or the Congress themselves, as a whole, can actually do. What they choose to do and what they make excuses for can be two different things. They're making excuses for why they can't do these things, or why we can't do this. When the LGBT community decided that
you did not include all their
I'm talking about the alphabet people. Yeah, I am.
You are in trouble.
They decided that they wanted to get married. Obviously, they've been wanting this for years, right? They wanted to get married and have the same civil unions that everyone else decided to have. That thing passed like that in the grand scheme of this country. It passed just like that. So that's what when black people see that, when we see reparations given to the Jewish community, and we see soft apologies given to the Asian community, the Japanese community after World War II for putting them in concentration camps in San Francisco, when we see things like that, we're sitting there looking back like, why is Brown versus the Board of Education such a taboo thing? Why does some white Catholic president have to be shot and another black man have to be shot in order for you to to pacify us? let me ask you a question, Pierre. Do you honestly care about the contract with Black America? What I
do not.
doing? I do not care about that.
I don't I don't care.
You know what?
And that may sound bad, but I don't.
Stop voting on the Civil Rights Act because it's a civil right. Because all people are entitled to these things. Everybody are entitled to these. We're not going off of our words. We're going off of your words, forefathers.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
We're going off of your words. This is what you said. Now, obviously, we all know that you didn't intend for that to be, except for these slaves over here, because I really like free labor. We all know that you weren't talking about us, but now in 2020,
it wasn't free. You guys had a certain amount of overhead.
That's fair. In 2020, we want you to say, by the way, we mean what we stood for. We mean what we said when we said all people, not half, not some, but all men were created equal. Now the women, it's gonna take a little more time. Possibly.
All right, so let me play the racist card then. Let me be a Trump guy for 5 seconds and understand I'm not this guy. But let me play the part of a Trump guy who is going to say, okay, Joe Biden's the president. Let's give him a chance. And he's going to ask you a very specific question. All of this aside, your points are very well made, and I agree with them. And when I asked you what you wanted, and I'm going to ask you this again, I know the answers. I know what the suggested answers are, but here's your challenge. In 2 years before the next election, where you may or may not vote for a Democratic Congress, a Democratic senator in your particular jurisdiction, you may or may not make Joe Biden's life easier in 2 years. You may or may not show up as a black vote. What specific things would you like to see done that could be codified in law, actual law, not feel good platitudes, but actual code enshrined as law would you like to see that would be minimally acceptable? And that's the challenge that I think that we need to put to the whole country, because there are some black people some white people, the people I'm pretending to speak for a moment here, who are going to say, okay, what do they want? They being African Americans, what do they want? What can we do? Because we feel like we've done this and we've done that and it hasn't worked. They refuse to be happy, whatever. And again, I'm speaking for them. They genuinely don't.
You're being way more eloquent than they would.
They genuinely don't understand. So what would your answer to that question be?
Here's what my answer would be. Here's what one of my answers would be.
Yeah,
what do you want, Pierre? You guys are always complaining about something. Well, number one, I don't want to see any more hate crime laws. You know why? Because it's all terrorists. I want them as anti-terrorism law to include domestic and foreign terrorists. That means that little hood that you got in your closet, that shit goes away, or we're prosecuting you. You're going to prison, or we're shooting you because we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's what I want in order to feel safe in this country. I feel safe because I'm going to take the law into my own hands if I have to on certain things. But for the folks that don't feel comfortable with that, I want them to sleep well at night. So I want hate crime laws gone away. They're all anti-terrorism laws, and you get prosecuted and executed to the fullest extent of the law. Need I go on?
Maybe a three-movie deal.
I would translate that as that you want to see crimes.
If you love America, like these guys, like these racists pretend that they are with the Confederate flags, that flies in the face of everything patriotic. If you love America, then that's what you would want to. Otherwise, you don't love the United States.
Okay. So
if I could piggyback on that with something different, not reparations, but resources. Provide resources for those places. Give the same resources that you would give to, obviously you can't give the resources you give to a private school because that's privately funded, but those other schools in the supposed suburban neighborhoods as opposed to the urban neighborhoods or the inner city neighborhoods, provide the same resources that you provide from a suburban neighborhood to an inner city.
White people don't talk like that.
Yeah,
it's this new term called equality. That's all we want.
Yeah, exactly. So provide the same resources that you provide from a suburban neighborhood to an inner city neighborhood, or what you want to call an inner city neighborhood to be. If you provide those same resources, then the teachers can probably like there could be a better quote unquote quality of teachers, or having the same type of textbooks that they have, because some of those neighborhoods have torn up textbooks or what have you, or they just don't get the right type of computers, especially in this time of distance learning, where like we're all, most of us are, I don't know if Weffy is, but we're all techs on this phone, right? So like if I get,
he's a tech wannabe. He wants to do what we do.
So like if I get a little Chromebook that has no power in it in some schools, and then get Dell's in another school with i5 processors or i7 processors, that's not the same resources. That's not the same resource. It's just not. It can't do the same thing.
Okay, so translate that. Let's play this experiment out. You made two strong suggestions, and you made and Jason made two earlier. But the suggestion was to translate it in plain English. Forgive me if I stumble here. To prosecute crimes of violence equally, regardless of who the victim is, and to do so aggressively. So if an African American, it doesn't matter, but specifically if an African American is a crime of violence, to pursue justice in that crime of violence against the perpetrator, and not to make special exceptions, and then also to see resources more equally distributed relative to education. Or let's say also let's extend that to economic incentives. Right? Okay, great. So those both are very valid arguments. Now, to put that on Joe Biden's desk, there's immediately a problem. Those are both state level decisions. Those are not things that Joe Biden can act on to any great degree. This is my concern is that Joe Biden has been set up, in a way that it's very difficult for him to succeed with your audience, because there's very little he can do, because it's been done before. We've been trying to make the country right by the way of African Americans since before Lyndon Johnson. And we seem to not be able to figure out how to do that. We either have a real problem that we can't solve, or we have a problem that's been solved and that you guys won't get good with. And I suspect it's the former. Understand, but that's the argument on the part of the opposite audience. How do we make African Americans happy? Because we don't know what else to do. We've tried everything. And I think that he's got a real problem in that area. I don't know how he can succeed. I wouldn't want to be in his position to answer that question. Let's put it that way.
The Department of Justice is probably a good place to start, right? Like that, I think the DOJ is a really good place to start. Yeah. Start there. Okay. Like when I see a video of some cat coming out and jumping in front of a police officer, threatening him with a window, as opposed supposedly that's what happened with Michael Brown, right? I'll just take it from your backyard. Yeah. Well, Pierre can actually attest to this, because I was in St. Louis a couple weeks after, talking about this very thing up on that high-rise roof in that restaurant. And I said, if what they said was true about Michael Brown, and he reached his hand in the window of a police car, I said it myself. I said, I would have shot that N-word. I said it just like that. You remember that, Pierre? I would have shot that. I remember that. Yesterday, I remember who was there and everything. I said that myself. Now, let's take that same situation and reverse it to a video I saw on Twitter the other day, with a white cat coming up to a police car, knocking on his window like that, trying to stick his hand on the window. That dude needed to be shot. If I'm a police officer, sorry about that.
Muted again.
Jason, you're muted.
Okay, see, now I'm on mute. If that white cat comes up there and does that, that's Pierre's pet peeve, right? if I'm a police officer and that white dude is banging on my window like that, he's getting shot that very moment. And I'm saying, I feared for my life. It was on the line. But white police officers don't see white bystanders that same way. And, that's why it should be labeled as a hate crime when they do things like that, because we're seen as threat.
I get it, but again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I hope nobody takes me as being the speaker for the Obama crowd, the Trump crowd. But again, we're being inconsistent here, and it's unfortunate. You just said that it should be labeled as a hate crime, and I don't mean to nitpick, but that's what lawyers do. Pierre suggested 20 minutes ago that we should get rid of hate crimes, right? So there's this certain amount of
terrorists. You're a terrorist.
I get it.
That's what you are.
I get it, but we have to be very specific, and we have to figure out a way to codify this improvement.
People always want black folks to be very specific. The core message is the same. You don't have to be specific towards me as how it is in this country. The bottom line, all we're asking for is fairness. I don't want any money.
I agree.
If you want to give me money, go right ahead. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for fairness across the law of the land as they've been written.
How do you codify fair? That's my
there's a set of standards.
The law.
The law is already written
in the Constitution. It's already written into the Constitution.
I agree.
You just have to follow it. You just have to follow it. Like and to say how can you constitute that into specific law? It's already there.
I agree. And yet it's not happening. I agree with you 100%, Jason, but it's not happening. And that's my challenge. What does Joe Biden do? You're the advisor. Jason, you've been called. You're moving to Washington, D.C.
that don't follow the law of the land. Serious.
Right. And I think there's and this is where specifics. Let's say you say some of these things are state laws, right? There has to be some type of and I know Republicans are going to hate this. There has to be some type of federal overseeing in terms of how police officers do things. There has to be federal oversight because if we take the state of Mississippi or state of Georgia where Ahmaud Arbery did that thing, they're going into a totally different way of investigating it. With the Breonna Taylor case in Kentucky, and that was a black dude, going a totally different way of investigating it. So this is where the Department of Justice comes in. That's why they're called the Department of Justice. Comes in and say we have to supersede this investigation and call this a federal thing.
That is a very good answer to my question. So let's take a step back and be academic about this. My question is, what can Joe Biden or his administration do that might be seen by African Americans, typical citizens, as something that would be acceptable as an attempt? Let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to get credit for attempts that may fail. An attempt to make things better. And your suggestion is that there should be federal oversight of local police departments, state level police actions. That's an answer. That's something that hasn't been tried to the best of my knowledge, that there would be some sort of attempt by the federal government, the Department of Justice, to review those incidents that don't pass the smell test. And we're going to come in and we're going to review this. And you know what? This was wrong. The guy was racially motivated and therefore has to be subject to something more aggressive than what you've passed. You can't get a pass on this. Like, he killed the black guy and it was because he was black. He either overreacted because he's flawed or he's racist. It's somewhere in between. He made a terrible mistake or he was a terrible person. But in any case, it was a terrible situation, and there has to be a price to be paid because we have to make this stop happening. So we pay the price until we get tired of paying the price, and then things get better. That's what the Joe Biden administration is going to do. That's an answer to your question, but you have to do those kinds of things. If he attempts that, it has to be up for constitutional review. Some attorney general in some state like Mississippi is going to say that the federal government's overstepping their division of powers rights. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court may kick it back. That's the whole argument against the civil rights movement in the 60s, that the federal government was overstepping their rights. If that kind of thing happens, does Joe Biden get credit for trying, or is he damned as a failure? That's my question. That's really the question I'm trying to ask.
I wouldn't deem it as a failure if he tried.
Right. Black people aren't stupid. Like, people try to act like black people can't discern who's tried or what's not. If he throws it up there and it all gets kicked down by these other organizations, it's not his fault. Like, we're not dumbasses, right? And I think people need to remember, we're Americans too, just like Black Lives Matter too. We're Americans too. We're not dumb. We know. Well,
depending on who you ask, my neighbors would tell you that you are dumb. And
no, that's on them, but they don't pay taxes at a high rate like I do. So hey, I'm closer to 1%.
See now, son, now you're being bougie. You're being bougie.
You don't want to pay people taxes. Go there. I have
Cube,
the right to.
You don't want to pay taxes, Cube. No,
I pay the hell out of
50 cent. 50 cent right there. 50 cent.
Look. Just because I don't want to pay taxes doesn't mean I don't write that check every year.
50 Cent don't want to pay his taxes.
Yeah, well,
Pierre voted for. Look. Let's be honest. Pierre voted for Trump.
I mean, if he voted for Trump, he voted for him. But I mean, his guy lost. If that's the case.
Why are you so angry tonight?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing that did happen. Here's the one thing that did happen, though. Here's how you know I voted for Biden along with so many other people in this country. This is why black people got Biden elected, because y'all, and Mike Shaw doesn't like this, but hey, Joe Biden put a bunch of black cards on that Charlemagne the God show, the Breakfast Club, when he said, "Oh, you vote for Trump, you ain't black." So maybe people was challenged to be like, "You ain't taking my card," and so they had to go do what they had to do.
People, I'm not black, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Black people did not vote for Joe Biden because Joe Biden said if they didn't vote for him, he was black. I could be wrong.
Look, we got to have a little bit of humor in this. People, here's what I hate that has happened, and I'm about to get off of the election and politics as a whole, and I'm just going to stop. I hate that we have lost our sense of humor as a country. Oh my God, we're so politically correct. There, I said it. I'm done with it. I needed to inject some humor. So Joe Biden motivated y'all asses to go vote because you didn't want your card taken. There, I said it.
I mean, I voted for him because he had a black woman on the ticket. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was that or the two white dudes. It's kind of a tough choice. No, but it's. I mean, like I would vote for Kamala because she was fine. That's why I was like, "Whoa, look at her!"
And again, that's a discussion for a future episode. Jason, you make a very eloquent point. You voted for Joe Biden because, at least in part, Kamala Harris. Jeff and I, and I'll speak for Jeff. He could correct me if I'm wrong, but Jeff and I voted for Joe Biden because he's not Donald Trump, and there's a difference there, right? Yeah. We're very empathetic to the African American cause, but I've learned very specifically all of my story earlier about get the fuck out of Ferguson, white boy, that I cannot and will not try to speak for the African American audience. I am not black, and I have the privilege of not being black. Sometimes I wish I was, but the fact is that I can't speak for that audience, nor can I speak for a Hispanic audience or the South Asian audience or whatever audience you can come up with that's a subset. I can only speak as a moderate white man who, wants to do better, but is trying to figure out how to do that through coded law, because that's really what government does. And it's a real challenge. And I'm really concerned about how we do that, because I think that if we don't do it, people are disappointed. Here's what I predict, 4 years from now, 8 years from now, I predict that you guys or African American community, not to point you in it, will be disappointed for the lack of progress and will not vote, because you're not going to vote for a Republican. I don't think we're going to see some sort of messiah come out of the Republican Party.
I actually disagree with that point. I think that this is the thing.
Not number.
We talked about
not quantity.
This. Fair. But we did talk about this, and I think that the African American community is kind of getting to a point where we're trying to decide where our loyalty should lie. Like most African Americans, there was a percentage that voted for Trump. What, 20? I don't know what the percentage was, but I think that somebody said 12.5% or something like that voted for Trump of the African American.
1 in 8 African American males that voted for Trump. 1 in 20 African American females voted for Trump.
Okay, so there's the numbers. So it's not that we are opposed to conservative values, because, like I said before, most people, African Americans especially, were raised in a conservative manner. Especially and even more especially if they come from a military home. Those values, religiously and military wise, are rooted in the African American community. It's just that you got the conservatives such as yourself. You guys are accompanied with the races that want to lynch us, and so therefore, as much as we like you, we can't join your team.
I get it
because we can't watch. We have to watch our back all the time on your side.
And you've heard. You guys have heard me say this several times, and I've told people this, and me and my wife, we've had this discussion. we would probably be Republican if they could get their social issues under control.
Jason and I talked about this before we came live. Here's a scenario for 4 years from now. So again, this is future episodes, but I suspect that right now you can see it. Go on Twitter for 5 minutes. The Democratic Party, the large group of multifaceted demographics that voted for President-elect Joe Biden is incredibly diverse, and in some areas, that entire umbrella of presumed demographics did not deliver. Cuban Americans in South Florida did not show up for President Biden because there was too much talk about socialism, and Cuban Americans have a major hatred of all things that are communist. Given their history, they will vote Republican if it comes down to socialist ideas. People in in Nevada, generally speaking, are not real thrilled with the idea of further lockdowns for COVID because their economy is suffering. You cannot, as a Democrat, there's two concepts as a general concept. Two divisions of America as a general concept. Republicans represent the status quo, the core of Main Street America, white males and those people who are allied with them and their businesses. And then the Democratic Party is, for lack of a better term, an umbrella organization of all of the disenfranchised subdivisions of America that are outside of that entitled core. And it's an argument about who is right and who is a bigger victim at a given time. That's a fact. And that's unfortunate. And that alliance of who falls into what area shifts constantly and has since FDR redistributed political philosophy during the Great Depression. So the idea that all Black people should vote for Democrats always is an ancient idea. It's archaic and it's falling down. That's what Jason is saying. That's what everybody's saying. That the presumption that Democrats make that all African Americans are going to show up and vote for them clearly is not the case, because they didn't show up for Hillary. So they did show up for Biden largely because they saw the damage that was being done by Trump, I presume. I could be wrong. I don't mean to speak for African Americans, but that's pretty clear to me.
That's fair. No,
okay,
that's fair.
so what you guys are saying is that we should not presume that they will be there in large numbers, and they showed up in such large numbers. Biden absolutely owes his entire existence as a president to African Americans. Again, in Atlanta, in Phoenix, in Detroit, in Columbus, in Cleveland, in Philadelphia, those African American communities showed up through the mail and got him elected. He owes a debt he will never be, which is my point, will never be able to repay to you guys, to the African American community. And I feel sympathetic to him because I think that he cannot be successful to a degree that will be satisfactory.
There's no way he can be successful completely, should I say. Like, I think that, like we've discussed so far, is that there are things and steps that can be taken. Like, it's like when you were growing up and, your mama sent you to school knowing you weren't prepared for the test. But as long as you tried, if you came home with a C, she'd be like really happy about it.
Yes.
like
I get it. He's going to get
how Black people are towards Biden. If he comes back with a C grade, we are ecstatic because we know that he's not going to get it all done.
He's not supposed to. He's not supposed to be the next.
Growing up in my household, we couldn't get C's. So
fair enough. because we had to be twice as good, right?
But to get back to my original drumbeat here, and again, Jason and I talked about this before we went live, is that there is an opportunity. Republicans, there's a guy in the St. Louis market that is on in the afternoon who is relatively moderate, but he leans conservative. Named Dave Glover. And I used to be a fan of his. I don't have hostility towards him, but he's been saying this for years, is that the Republican Party represents an ideal. The Republican Party as it is today was kind of defined by as an antithesis of Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson seized the stage and defined the new Democratic Party. And the Republican Party became kind of like the leftovers. And then when the Cold War was going on, Reagan was able to say, look, the Russians are the enemy. We need to get rid of them. And he was able to build a community around that concept. Well, the Soviets have been gone for 40 years, right? So that's a done, well, 20 years. That's a done deal. And we're now dealing with a major evolution of political philosophy between the two-party system. Number one, parties are stupid. We should get rid of them. We should have a multi-party system. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So there's a redefinition. And if the Republicans were smart, they would recognize that their target audience is shrinking. Trump has been very good about finding new versions through evangelicals and people who are racist to expand that base. So good for him. He found a way. Not good for him, but congratulations for his being smart. I have to be very careful with my words. Right, morons. Very good, blazing saddles. But my point is that if that base is constantly shrinking as people get old. As my mom, I told Pierre this earlier this week. I mentioned it to Jeff as well on Twitter. My mom is scared to death of Joe Biden becoming president because she's bought into all of the fear mongering. She's sure that black protesters are going to come take 90% of her money through taxes. She's scared to death of Joe Biden being president. To be perfectly clear, she's listened to irrational thinking and has bought into it being reality. It's terrible. It's unfortunate. I will not speak ill of my mom because I love her, but any other person that believes that I would call stupid. I hope she's not watching this video, but it is what it is. That base is shrinking. It's shrinking rapidly as those people grow old, and people that are Jeff's generation and younger are coming in on the opposite side. If Republicans were smart, they would recognize that their tent doesn't encompass enough people to win elections ongoing. No Republican president has won an election since George Bush the first. Let me phrase this very carefully. No president has been elected with a popular vote except for George Bush in the second term because it was an existing president during wartime. Republicans have gotten elected without the popular vote. The consensus of the people that vote is against them, and it gets worse every year that new Generation Z people come online. It's a fact. And if they want to continue to exist as a party, well, they have to at some point because we have a two-party system. They've got to figure out how to include new people. If someone was smart, again, I use Mark Cuban as an example because Mark Cuban has no problem with people of color. Mark Cuban, who is very pro-business and physically conservative and relatively socially conservative, could come to the American people and say, look, the business of America is business. We need to take care of small businesses. We need to take care of large businesses because they are who are employing you. They create jobs. So low tax rates for businesses are not a bad thing. But we should tax rich people. We should simplify tax code so that people are not skating by Donald Trump. They should pay their fair share. I should pay my fair share. We can also be fair to Americans of all colors and give them social justice, but we can be physically conservative. We do not have to cater to special rights groups who are well out of their depth, demanding a disproportionate amount of attention. I'm going to get in trouble here, but people of the LGBTQ whatever community who are demanding attention that may be disproportionate with what their level of persecution has been. Speak to the conservative values that are held by Black Baptists and white blue collar people in Ohio, and make a new coalition that includes African Americans and Cuban Americans in South Florida and upscale Mexican Americans who have migrated to this society, and quit presuming that you can group all people of color. All the black people are going to think this, and all the brown people are going to think that, and we're good to go. If they would open up that tent and encompass, get rid of the racists and include the people of color, there would be a new Republican Party, and the Democratic Party would be out of business for a generation.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and I mean, it's a concept, and if they don't do that, they're going to fail because they're vestigial.
Yeah, I don't completely disagree with what you're saying. I do think there's a couple of things that are really important in terms of what conservatives can do to generate a new base, should I say, to add to their base
Yes.
that would bring them to the arm forward in the next couple elections. Like, know history and acknowledge history is probably the number one thing. Such as, I'll give you an example. Saying that Black people care about affirmative action is a misconception. Affirmative action was not created to help Black people. It was created to help white people. That's like one thing right there. White women, as my wife so eloquently says. And so, yeah, she's quick to add that, but don't mess with these Black women. Don't mess with them, Kamala. But yeah, knowing the history, get rid of the talking points about Black people. Like, Black people are not a monolith. You're not a monolith. You shouldn't have that slave mentality or that plantation mentality. Those are stupid things to say to Black people that Black conservatives are saying to Black people. Yes. That white conservatives are repeating to Black people. Stop saying those things. Acknowledge, yeah, history was messed up. Stop saying the Republican Party was the party that ended slavery. We don't care.
Right. That was 150 years ago.
Slavery sucked. It didn't matter who ended it, as long as it ended. That's what we care about. It's the party of Lincoln. Lincoln has been dead and that same party shot Lincoln. Like let's like keep these things very real in terms of history is concerned. Yeah, Lyndon B. Johnson, like, Republicans had the opportunity. I think it was on John F. Kennedy's desk before the Civil Rights Act passed, right? So, like, it could have happened, but it didn't. We acknowledge we made some mistakes. Let's start there. We acknowledge we made some mistakes, but I promise you, these conservative values are for everybody. We don't want the government coming in and taking over everything or taking your money.
Right.
You like money, I like money. Let's all make money together.
Right.
That's what it is. Like, stop treating us. Yeah, exactly. Pierre wants to drop honeys in Magic City with the wings.
Make it hail.
Like, he wants to do it.
That's right.
He wants to do it.
I do.
So
just don't tell my wife.
So Andy, what you're saying about the whole Cuban angle, I agree. In a perfect world, I think that was exactly what the Republicans need to do, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the next, I'm going to say, 30 years. Simply because the people that are in power on the right are cowards. They are not going to abandon the racist because the racists are the ones putting them in the House and in the Senate. It's not going to happen until the people that are in right now start dying.
That's my problem. That's the real problem. And I've alluded to this before. 4 years from now, okay, we've got a break here. What we've got here is we've been drowning for 4 years and we've been given a life preserver. Joe Biden was the default anti-Trump, and enough people said we have got to get rid of this specific personality that will go with this other guy. And so we have an opportunity for Joe to succeed. And that's what we're talking about. What can he do? What can he do to be successful? What can he do to be better, to make America better tomorrow, 2 years from now, than it is today? Let's give him those 2 years and let's see what he can do. Given the logistics of the situation, a hostile Senate, a Supreme Court that's 6-3. Okay, let's see what he can do. And we'll give him, if he makes any minimal effort, we'll give him probably props. Okay, word. So my problem is that when we come down to the next presidential election in 4 years, or if Joe runs again and everybody likes him in 8 years, the problem is that the base that Donald Trump created is not gone away. They are now reality, right? So the problem is that the Republican Party has a core that has no interest in being progressive, and the Democratic Party has no core at all. Everything is in an extreme. There is no base. The base is there, but the base is not coordinated. The base is us. So the question is who is going to be smart enough or capable of seizing the center? Because the center is what is going to be progressive for this country. Not progressive, but appropriate for this country, successful in this country, is the answer for this country, and will win an election. But the problem is that we're set up right now for this constant swinging back and forth of Clinton is too liberal. Okay, well, Bush is too conservative. Now Obama is extremely liberal. Now Trump is ultra conservative. And what is Biden is going to be moderate. Maybe that is the answer, or maybe it's a pasia to get us through to the next question. That next time that question comes up, Biden is gone. He's passed away because he's old, or he's resigned because he's old, or it's he's served out his 8 years, and now we have an open slate. I swear to God, if we don't find a middle, we are going to be in real trouble. There will be concepts of civil war, and I don't see how we get to that middle unless someone who is wealthy, charismatic, and moderate, Mark Cuban, comes on the stage and is that centrist personality, which I keep praying for.
I think Joe is as closest you're going to get to that middle, and I think the only reason we have him is because Trump was such a fuck up. I don't think someone who is middle like that is appealing enough to the people on either end that you're going to get him on a consistent basis. That's why we swing so back and forth all the time.
I don't think it's realistic, but I wildly disagree. Imagine this, Jason. You imagine this with me because you're the most black-centric person of the four of us, I think. Pierre, you're high yellow. It is what it is. Okay. So Jason, tell me what you would have thought, because you've already said that there's a certain slice of Trump that is attractive to you, a la the Platinum Plan. If he had actually talked it up and put some money into it, you might have been interested in giving it a look, right? Okay. So let's say that Donald Trump, let's go all the way back to the 2016 Republican convention, where he was being accused of being a racist. The Khan family was throwing him under the bus during the Democratic convention. Let's say that Donald Trump came out and stood on that stage in front of America and said something along the lines of the following: I'm being accused of being a racist. Let me be very clear. I have no time for racism. If you're a racist, if you think that black people are a lesser race, that are less capable, if you think that women are less capable, if you think people of Asian descent are less capable, if you think that people are Native American descent are less capable than me, than most of us, the people who have privilege in this America, then please do not vote for me, because that is not the Republican Party I want to be. I am going to be the party of inclusion. I will have African Americans, Native Americans, women, people of Asian descent in my cabinet, and I will try my best. I will fail, but I will try my best to succeed, to try to reach some minimal progress in that area. I'm a Republican. This is the new Republican Party. I'm Donald Trump. I hope I have your vote.
He never would have got the nomination if he said that the first time.
He already has a nomination. He's at the convention.
Okay. Second time.
But here's the thing, though. That's what
no.
We've been waiting for somebody from the Republican Party to say that for years.
I'm asking Jason the question. My point is, let me ask, but let's get into the question. Jason, if he had said something to that effect, would that have resonated with you at any level?
It would have got my attention.
There we go.
Then we would have done a little class in history, and then he would have had to answer. You know, the same way Kamala had to answer questions about her record. We said, "What about this ad you put out about the Central Park Five?"
Sure, word up. But he could say,
but like we need to find out if he's resolute in the things that he's saying now. Like, so like it's one thing. Like, this is the thing that the conservative and Republican Party will have to deal with for the next 30 years. They can do good in everything that they do, right? And have great intentions, but we're still going to be at this point, well, what about this thing? Well, what about Trump? Well, what about this? Well, what about this?
But
like, we're still
those questions can be answered. Those questions can be answered. He could look.
Would they be answered in one statement? Like, we're not, black people ain't.
You can't have your cake and eat it too, Jason. You said that the black people are ready to jump. Okay, what I'm saying is that,
but we're not going to jump at somebody making a statement, because 44 other white presidents made plenty of statements to us.
I agree, but you guys got to vote for somebody or stay home. You've got three choices.
This is why we end up voting Democrat, because the Republican Party tends to lie.
I get it. I get it.
The stay home is what gets me, because if Trump comes out and says that for a second term, the shit kickers that got him in the first time are going to stay home, and he's not going to get in anyway. He's going to get one or the other. He's not going to get both.
I'm not talking about Trump. We're talking about a theoretical. Here's what's going to happen. Think about American politics. There's going to be let's say that 4 or 8 years from now, the candidate will be in 4 years, Joe Biden, unless he doesn't want it. In 4 years or 8 years, the candidate will be Kamala Harris. Again, presuming that there's not some sort of major, what do you call that when you do something wrong, like a flaw, like there's a reason for that
blowjob,
something like that, right? So presuming, the Democratic Party has been defined for the next generation by this success. Okay, so what I'm saying is that the Republican Party has the opportunity to succeed or fail based upon who the next candidate is going to be, and that will be the primary process. They fucked it up in 2016. As much as an asshole as he is, who's the governor of Wisconsin, Pierre? Walker?
Former governor, yeah, Scott Walker. Right.
Scott Walker, to his credit, said he was running for president in 2016 and bailed early. And he made a speech. I heard it. I was driving by the Hardee's in High Ridge or in Fenton, Missouri. I know exactly where I was when I heard his make the speech live. He basically said, to paraphrase, look, I'm getting out of this race because clearly I'm not going to win, number one. But number two, we need to get all of us, Romney, Rubio, all of you guys need to get the hell out of this race and pick one of us to be the anti-Trump, because if we don't, Trump is going to win and he's going to ruin this party for a generation. That's exactly what's happened. So the question becomes, there's an opportunity. Jeff says it won't happen because they're too beholden to the old racists and the old money, but there's an opportunity for some Republican or some person that wants to take over the Republican Party to say, no, we failed last time because of this guy and his values. We have to do something better. We have to be more woke, for lack of a better term.
I absolutely agree. But the theoretical you put forward was, what if Trump had said that in the second election? And Trump loses the shit kickers if he says that. Going forward, the next election, someone other than Trump says that, I'm 100% with you.
Okay.
So that wasn't what we were talking about.
Let me answer it in that theory, in the second theory, in the last theory, where if someone 4 years now, black people are at a place where if that were to happen, they would definitely have our attention. Trump even had our attention for a moment. Believe it or not.
That's my point.
Believe it or not, he did have our attention. However, the rhetoric that he spewed and the people that followed him are what caused us, or what turned us off. And so we had to do, if Black Twitter, for lack of a better way of saying it, was all about, man, we got to pick the lesser of two evils again.
Yes.
And so we're still not completely sold on Biden.
Yes.
They're still not completely sold on Harris. However, they're saying, you know what? It's definitely better than Trump.
Yes.
And if I can go outside and 2 out of the 7 days feel like there's racism out there, I'm good, because this 6 out of 7 is not cool at all.
Let me put it a different way. Okay. Back in 2012, when Mitt Romney was running against Obama, if you think back and you're honest with yourself, Obama was very vulnerable at that time because the economy was not doing great things and he had made some mistakes, and there was an opportunity for a Republican. Mitt Romney ran. The problem with Mitt Romney is he's too nice and he's too milquetoast, and he was too much a victim of personality attacks. But he also made a major mistake. There was a question about a gay person in a position of senior leadership in the military, a colonel that was gay. And what do you think about this? And they hemmed and they hawed because, per what Jeff points out, they were very, very concerned about offending their base. It's built into it was a spur of the moment event, and they all failed. Every Republican on the stage failed because they didn't make a absolute statement. If Mitt Romney or any Republican on that stage at that point had said something along the lines of, this guy's a colonel in the United States Army. He's been to frickin' desert. I haven't been, but he has. He's a hero and he's gay. Clearly, gay people are of great value in the military and they're heroes. I have no problem with him being there. Next question. He would have decisively gained respect in the middle and even on the left. And yes, he would have offended people on the right, but I think that he would have won the election. I think he would have done much better. He would have had a chance to win the election because it would have been a decisive statement. I think that let's make it very academic. Some future anti-Trump candidate, let's presume that the in 2024, 2028, that the Republican Party is arguing the Trump legacy. Do we embrace Trumpism, or is there some sort of counter-Trumpism? And let's presume that they're smart enough to make the counter-Trumpism argument a single individual. And let's presume that that person is close to having a chance of getting elected. That person somehow puts out an argument that isn't offensive to fiscal conservatives, but does embrace some slice of the concerns of brown Americans in the Sun Belt, brown Americans in Florida, brown Americans in the Mid-Atlantic, and black people across this fucking country, 15% of the population, just a slice. We have to include them. They are our fellow Americans. Their concerns are real, and they're dying because of the violence by blue people, most of which are great Americans, but some of which are assholes. And we've got to figure that out. And I am going to do my best to do that. I want to be your president. It's a home run. It's an automatic win. I hope and I pray for that, because that is the embodiment of my ideals.
The only way that would happen is if the Republican Party nominated a person of color for their nomination.
I don't think that we're that far away from that.
I don't disagree, but the only way that we would be willing, the black community would really be willing to listen, is if they actually nominated a person of color, not to be vice president, but to actually be president.
Do you think someone like that could get through the primary?
No,
I think you got 20 or 30. I think you got 20
or
30 years till you even get.
No, and I'm not talking about Ben Carson. No.
Well, let me ask you this, Jason. Who is that black person? Who is that? Give me one example of a black person that would be a Republican. That
he doesn't exist right now.
That's my point.
If Colin Powell did it, he could have won.
He's too smart to do it.
It probably would have to be a black person with some type of great military experience, like a Colin Powell. Because if it's just like Jason Austin or Pierre Robinson, you're an attorney and you became a senator, whatever, you're not getting through the Republican primary. I agree with you on that, Jeff.
Yeah.
So what about the broad brush stereotype that if an African American is a Republican, he's an Uncle Tom, and therefore he has no chance of ever getting off the ground?
And see, that's the thing. That's part of the conundrum that comes with that, is that black people will use the C word for yes, they would use that. They would use that word. Yes.
Let me ask you this question, because this is a personal question, because I've seen that term used. Is that term offensive? Is that term offensive if I use that term? Am I not to use that term? Or is that term?
You are not to use that term, actually.
Okay.
It is an offensive term. You are not to use it.
Okay.
Do not use it. Uncle Tom is probably more appropriate for you to use. But
answering that question a little bit more, though, is like the reason why, in my opinion, and maybe this is just me thinking about my own personal reason how I look at black Republicans, but I think a lot of times that black Republicans are called coons or Uncle Toms has to do with like they end up saying a lot of things that are counteractive to African Americans. I feel and that's where the problem comes into play. You should be able to be a black Republican and not necessarily say anything that's counteractive. To pretend like, racism doesn't exist or I'm immune to those things that have happened, that's idiotic. And I don't understand why black Republicans tend to do that. And
so what you're saying is no black Republican up to this point has said the things that I'm saying. Yeah, right. If you were black and said we need to address the concerns of black people,
you need someone with balls, which I think is what Trump had, but unfortunately he was a moron. If you get someone with half a brain that also had a sack on him, I think you're right. I think they could run through an election. He's against Biden easily. They don't exist.
What about? It's hard to say that he had balls though. Like balls. Like it's like hard to say it because he was just more. He just wasn't a good person, and I think
he wasn't. I think that he also wasn't afraid to stand up against the party.
That's fair, but even with the things that Trump that people did like, the policies that people did like, it's hard to stand by somebody who makes perfect sense but is a jerk to everybody. It's just hard to stand by. I'm like, Republicans are good at doing that, unfortunately. I mean,
what 71 million of them did it this time?
Yeah, exactly. I think the problem that we have is that a lot of the black conservatives, they tend to reiterate the talking points that somebody white gave them. And it's like they don't even, it's like they forget. Like, I'll give you an example. Candace Owens is a great example of forgetting, quote unquote, where she came from, as the black community would say. Like, you forgot where you came from. It's like Method Man, or
what she went through too.
Exactly.
So
it's like,
so let's make the presumption that it is supremely difficult for an African American, someone that has black skin, to be a Republican, right? It's extremely difficult to have any credit with the African American community if you are a full-on Republican. So you said that it has to be an African American to make that kind of statement as a Republican, but we also state that it is extremely difficult for an African American Republican to just exist. So what about the scenario where you take a step back and it's a white Republican who brings on an African American vice president and speaks those same concepts? Again, I hate to pick on the guy, but a Mark Cuban who clearly has no problem with people of color and brings out a, I don't know who, let's say he gets LeBron James to run for vice president. I don't know who the likely candidate is, but some person that he has an affinity with and has intelligence. Okay, let's be more realistic. Let's say that LeBron James, and let's say that Dave Chappelle announces tonight that he's running for Congress and he wins in Congress in 2 years. And that 4 years later, he's a 2-term congressman with some success, and he's made major impact. And for whatever reason, he likes Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban and Dave Chappelle are the ticket. And Mark Cuban's got the money and the personality, and he's going to seize the stage. But then Dave Chappelle is underneath of him, and they're saying the kinds of things we're saying. Is that a viable policy? Is that a viable combination?
I think it is a viable combination. However, I don't think they'd have to do it more than once. Like, the Republican Party would have to show consistency in that area for us. So, like, to do it once is just, it's a one-off for us because overall, like, we are looking at the history of it. Like, historically, like, let's say that the Republican Party does vote this person into the primaries as the nominee and gets to accept the nomination at the convention, yes, with a bunch of white people saying he's great, he's this, he's that, and he has to literally have no flaws. He has to have no flaw. He cannot be Herman Cain. He cannot be Dr. Ben Carson. Ben Carson lost mad respect.
He's got to be Barack Obama.
He has to be Barack Obama ultimately. He has to be preaching this. Like, this is the hope. The Republican Party is the hope. It is like he's got to be Ice Cube. No, he cannot be Ice Cube because black people are very upset at Ice Cube right now.
While we're talking about things that don't exist, so on the other side, what about what if you take a Democratic nominee that is socially very progressive, very liberal, but is more fiscally conservative? Do we think they could get in on the Democratic side?
Absolutely.
See, I think that's a lot more likely than trying to get through on the red side.
I think the thing about being fiscally conservative isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Let's save some money, right, here and there. Like, let's make a way for everybody to save some money, but at the same time, let's still help everybody. Like, the Conservative Party seems like as though
I disagree 100%.
I think that the thing is maybe this is a mischaracterization of the Republican Party, but people don't believe the Republican Party want to help people.
I agree.
They want to get all the money and keep it to themselves and let the rich get richer instead of saying, "Hey, let's take care of this homeless problem."
That's what they've done.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree 100%. We're screwed. Really, we are screwed because we've built a wall and we're both in two camps. The fact is that we're in two camps, and it's extremely difficult. This conversation, if nothing else, has illuminated that it's extremely difficult to cross that barrier. But to speak to Jeff's question of a fiscally conservative, socially liberal, it doesn't sell. Go back to the results of
that speaks to someone like me, but yeah, I agree. It probably doesn't sell, but that speaks to someone.
When has
like
it been
me.
Tried?
Go back. It has been tried. Joe Biden is that guy,
and he's in the White House.
He's in the White House. He's in the White House because Trump is a uniquely flawed individual, and Joe Biden is the guy.
That's true.
That was the catch-all anti-Trump person. But my point is,
we have an opportunity now. If he does a good job, and this could be the start of that. But it's on the blue side. It's not on the red.
Things could change. You're absolutely correct. But given the general trend that Biden has to deal with, look, if at best case scenario is Biden has to deal with Bernie's done, Bernie's burned out, Bernie is gone, but Elizabeth Warren and AOC and her followers are real and they are coming. These are your people, Jeff, and especially the Gen Z that's behind you, and the Gen Z that's behind you. Look, we had this conversation 4 years ago. No, but we had the conversation 4 years ago about whether education should be free for all people or not, and whether that was practical or not.
I don't want it free for all people. I pay too much for my education.
You've been taught by paying taxes and having a family that's probably not practical. But there is a generation behind you. There are people that are coming out that are 22. My daughter's 11. She'll be voting in 6 years. Okay, there are people who are coming who have no sense of why socialism doesn't work. And they think that they can have their cake and eat it too. And those people are not going to be good with fiscal conservatism. We all agree that liberal progressiveness is a good thing. Okay. We'll abandon the Republican Party, and 2/3 of us are going to agree that's a good thing. But the Democratic Party has got to figure out how to make the Elizabeth Warrens of the world and all of the Cubans who hate Castro in South Florida work together. And whoever you go to, you have to pick A or B. Whenever you pick A, B is open for grabs. And that's the question, is because the Bs of the world, the Lincoln Republicans who don't have any interest in free Medicare for all people, and I think that's a good idea, by the way, for the record. But generally speaking, the people who don't think that student loans should be forgiven, that education should be free, that there should be basic income, these concepts that we just can't wrap our brains around, Cuban Americans who are anti-socialism, Asian Americans who are anti-communism, these are real demographics that have to vote one way or the other, ultimately speaking.
This is true.
And the question is how the Democratic Party is very subdivided into a multifaceted, really discompatible group of people.
I think the Bernies and the Warrens of the group are a very vocal minority, because just judging by the fact that they can't get through a primary. I don't think there's as many of them as
wildly wrong.
Then why aren't they getting through?
Give it.
They've lost every single time.
Give it 10
They can't
years.
even get a.
They barely failed 4 years ago under the worst candidate ever, which was Hillary Clinton. They couldn't even get past Hillary. And now people like me that 4 years later have abandoned them. I wouldn't vote for Bernie this time. I get that.
The people that did voting that are moving away from it.
I get that, but there is an entire generation. You define it. What happens on Twitter when I call you a millennial? You say it's not the millennials, it's the Gen Z people. The Gen Z people hate you because you like Harry Potter. The Gen Z people are coming for you people.
And they don't vote.
Real. No,
they don't vote.
They do vote. Give it 10 years. That's what I'm talking about. Socialism.
In 10 years, they're not going to be voting the same way I was.
Free stuff from the government is real. And those people will vote. And those people will vote Democratic. Period. So the rest of us who want to be Democrats or moderate Republicans that are going to vote Democrats have got to figure out how to get good with that, or we've got to find an alternative. And that's why I'm saying that if you get a post-Trump Republican, there's a real chance that person can really make some inroads. And if they're smart enough to reach out to who those target possible demographics that can be peeled off, African Americans, especially brown Americans, Latino Americans, are absolute. Look, George Bush spoke Spanish for a reason, and people of Mexican descent voted for him for a reason, because they are not automatically Democrats. People coming from Asia, oh my God, to presume that they're all going to vote Democratic is a radical mistake. People from, look, call it what it is. I'm going to paint with a broad brush and be stereotypical. People coming from Asia work hard. They work extremely hard for small businesses. They do well, and they don't want to see that government involvement in that process, and they definitely don't want to see the government take the money from them that they have worked so hard to get. Generally speaking, they get past the racism and they work really hard to be successful in America. And a few generations from now, people from South Asia and East Asia are going to be Republican regardless of everything else.
And you know why? Because they're not
I get it.
marginalized the way
I agree.
other people of color are, specifically black people.
Black people are
Like,
uniquely marginalized, Jason.
yes,
We all agree.
like we are considered the worst on, and we don't even know why. We don't even know why. We're
And that's by
considered and
those other,
treated the
and
worst.
that's
It's
by those
jealousy.
other ethnic groups too.
I agree.
Jealous.
Yeah,
It's by African Americans in some cases.
yeah.
Africans coming to America don't like
and
African
whatever that
Americans.
is, we don't. It's kind of one of those things, and I think that's part of the reason why black people are ripe for the picking. Because if somebody says, like, to your point, if somebody came at us and said, "Hey, if I'm going to tell you right now, the very first thing I'm doing is pushing this black agenda, right? Even if it's Ice Cube, like the contract with Black America, whatever it is, the platinum plan, whatever you want to call it, the diamond plan, the Magic City plan, I don't care what you want to call it. Whatever it is, it's about black people. And if you can't get on board, exactly, Wu-Tang forever. Like, if you can't get down with that, then don't vote for me. And black people are like, you know what, I like that guy right there. He's willing to stand up to his own. And he could be a white person, but he probably wouldn't be successful as a white person. Because the one thing that racists hate more than black people are people who support black people.
So that goes back to that core value that I have. So I say this here often, that I think that the presumption is that white people don't really know how black people think. That's very clear to me. But there's a presumption that black people pretty much know how white people think. And I think that that's incorrect. And I've pointed that out to Pierre enough times that I think that he would probably agree with me, that there are conversations that have amongst white people that exclude black people, where we feel like we're safe enough to talk about African American and the African American community. But when those conversations take place, it's not a hatred thing. It's more of a frustration on their part, white people, that they don't know what they've done wrong, and they don't know how to make it right, and they don't know how to make African Americans happy. There's a genuine interest, or how do I say this most carefully? There's a genuine belief that they're not doing anything wrong, that they have no hatred, that they wish that they had more African American friends and family, but they don't know how to do it right. And they don't know why you're so upset. Now, is that white privilege? Absolutely. Is that ignorance? Absolutely. But is that something to condemn? No, it's a lack of communication. It's a lack of perspective. And so what I'm saying is that I don't think that someone that has a pro-black agenda, that is something that is not going to destroy society, we're going to run up $10 trillion in debt and call it incentives or whatever radically expensive agenda. No. White people, look, you can be good with this. This is what we're going to do. And it's not anti-white. It's just pro-black. And
so how about this? Why don't you just do what you said you were going to do?
Oh, I agree.
40 acres of, I mean, like, let's start there. And then here's another thing to add on that. What if white people treated black people like white people? That's an interesting concept, right? Like that's a really interesting concept to think about. What if when somebody banged against my window, or if I was sitting at an ATM, I thought, there's a white person behind me. He's not really white, but he's black. But he's white, so he's good. What if I thought to myself, you know what? There's a white person that just killed somebody, or there's a black person that killed somebody. But what if I give him a couple less years because he's a good person? He's societal. He probably had a bad shake, but he's kind of white. Like, let's think of him as like, if I was a white person and I treated every black person the way I treated a white person, then maybe, just maybe, we would have some type of fair society. But we don't do it because all of these colorblind people think that they don't understand black people. Black people are the exact same as white people, except for cultural differences. Cultural difference. That means the way you grew up,
the kind of music you listen to. I get it.
The growing up. No. Plenty of white people listen to rap. I'm not even gonna say that. I'm not even gonna say it. I don't even put music in that category. I'm saying, like, most black people came up. They went to church. They did this. They grew up. Was taught right and wrong. And some of them along the lines went awry. Some of them grew up without a father. Oh, I think some white people grew up without fathers too. I mean, like we're the exact same thing. We're all human. We're all human. And
where you grew up is a great point. Like, so just at a left field, but where I grew up at, I didn't see anyone other than a white person until my brother moved to St. Louis and I came to visit him. I went my entire childhood only seeing white people.
The first black person Jeff ever saw was Derek.
That honestly might be true. But that's what I'm like. That's what I'm saying about the rights base, that core Trump base. That's the kind of people you're dealing with. I don't really think it is people that want to come in.
Hate black people.
They do though. The entire area I grew up in, 90% people, it was legitimate. And it was out of ignorance, but it was hate, and that's what you're dealing with.
Because of what they saw on TV. Because of what white producers and white TV stations decide, hey, let's put this on TV. Let's put this N-word on TV with handcuffs on. Let's put this N-word on TV, like stealing from raping some white woman. Oh, better yet, let's just make it up like some white woman did.
Maybe I'm naive.
And that's where those misconceptions come from.
Maybe I'm naive. I agree. Okay, so if I go back and watch what was the back in the 70s, not Clint Eastwood. Who was the other guy that was shooting up?
Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson movies. Okay, Charles Bronson had a disproportionate hatred for black people, or his gun did. Okay, but that was in the 70s and going into the 80s. When I was growing up, to be perfectly honest, my perspective of African Americans, keeping in mind that I lived amongst them, but I saw the Huxtables. I don't have that cultural reference. I can't find it. I can't summon it from my memory of African Americans as being disproportionately violent. I didn't get that until I started listening to rap music when I was in college, and gangster rap.
What were you watching on TV then?
I was watching the Cosby Show.
You said it yourself. I think the difference is you grew up around everybody, and that's not common, especially in the Midwest. That's not a common thing, and it sucks. But there's a reason people are so ignorant.
So let me interject for a second and add this. Some of the way that white people view black people is black people's fault. Let's just keep that 100%. That's another whole show, right? That's 100% wrong. Like, you two are the only two white people that I've ever told that to. This is an exclusive, brother and the man exclusive. I'm telling you,
it's on the internet. Millions
of the black race. Some of it is our fault, right? But sometimes the way we're portrayed is definitely on white people. And I think that, like, they portray us this because of some stereotype that came from Jim Crow. And, like, there's no acknowledgement of that on the right a lot of times. And so that's kind of where the problems come in. And so, we want blacks to be acknowledged, politically and stuff like that. But unfortunately, the right ignores black people a lot of times. They say, you know what, they should vote for us because we have values and this, that, and the third. But they never share their values with us. We don't get to experience some of those values.
Here's what I genuinely think we have to do. And again, it's such a complicated issue, and we've been trying to solve it for, longer than I've been alive, and I'm the oldest out of all of us. I think I'm 48. But again, I go back to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood was Richard Pryor. And in almost every Richard Pryor movie, there's some stereotypical white guy who's racist, right? So in The Toy, it's Jackie Gleason. Jackie Gleason is some sort of like unrealistically dismissive of African Americans. And he's a cartoon. He's a caricature of something from a bygone age. Okay. Then you move into the 2000s, the 90s and the 2000s, and we're all equal. And then, in high school, I was listening to rap music. I was listening to rap music in the second generation. So Run DMC and MC Hammer and before he sold out and all of these things. And boom, on the stage, there appeared from the East Coast Public Enemy and from the West Coast NWA, both within a couple of years of each other. And Fight the Power and the entire NWA catalog were alarmingly upsetting to me, because I have black friends. I'm not racist. And yet you guys are clearly upset. What did I do? And it's extremely frustrating for me So I then begin to orientate myself to trying to be empathetic. I listened. I try to understand. I fail, but I try to understand. And I make a statement, and Pierre says, "That's the dumbest thing you've ever fucking said. Don't say that again." And then I go back and I try again. And I constantly am adjusting my perspective on. I can't speak for African Americans, and I can't understand what it's like, but I gotta try to parallel it in my own mind so I can try to respond to it. Okay, and then we used to Pierre and I would sit on the Brian Cave help desk 15 years ago, 20 going on 20 years ago, and we would have free time because their calls weren't coming in, and we would look at a website called ytmnd.com. It was one of the very birthplaces of what are now called memes on the internet. And there would be something that was humorous, but the humor would be racially based, or the responses to the humor would contain the N-word on a fairly regular basis. And it was disarming to me because I don't understand how that's socially acceptable. When I grew up, racism was a caricature. We were past that. Martin Luther King had his holiday. We had succeeded and we were all moving together. Well, take me genuinely though. We were past that. That was something that my grandpa did and didn't mean it. I'm good with that. We're going to move forward. And suddenly, especially under Trump, that clearly isn't the case. We spent 8 years trying to figure out why Obama was born in Kenya, only because he was black. And then we spent 4 more years trying to figure out why the Confederate flag is a great thing, because it's okay to run over young women in Charlotte if you're protecting a statue of Robert E. Lee. The last 12 years have been very illuminating to me. And it's disarming, but it's hard for me to get good with the idea that what Jeff is saying, the entirety of Southwest Missouri, where he grew up in and around Branson, if you're outside of the municipal boundary, everybody automatically hates black people.
Even inside,
it's just the way it is.
So
shout out to my brother-in-law. He's from Branson. What's up, John?
Yeah. Hey, yeah. So like growing up down there,
white power, ginger power, black power.
So,
I don't know, whichever it is.
So, I said I had never seen a person of color until I moved up here. I heard the N-word multiple times on a daily basis, and it was not.
You probably said the N-word.
It was coming from the Cowboys from Blazing Saddles.
Was that your older brother though?
My oldest brother, half the time.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. It's like, so the caricature, like the Cowboys from Blazing Saddles, those were my high school teachers. Like those people are still everywhere, and it drives me crazy now looking back on it. We're not as far along as we think we are.
Here's it in a nutshell then, right there between Jeff and I. My hope is that someone says we're going to embrace African Americans and Brown Americans, Latino Americans. Let's just say that those are the 2 big demographics. Korean Americans and Indian Americans are doing okay. And they're going to be okay. Fine. Let's embrace Latino Americans. Let's embrace African Americans. And by extension, we'll also embrace Native Americans. And we're going to bring them in. And we're going to have a new Republican Party that's going to embrace them. And Jeff is saying, I'm hoping that most white people are going to be, I'm okay with that because they're not going to raise my taxes. And I have those people at work. I like them. So why should I not include them in my political thinking? I'm okay with this. And Jeff is saying that the vast majority of people who have this complexion are going to automatically be like, no, I can't be good with that because whatever reason. If that's the case, we're fucked. And then we might as well all move to the left and build a new Democratic Party.
Okay. So like everybody has preconceived notions about different cultures and races, right? Like there's this thing out there that white people don't wash their legs. Like, I don't know, on TikTok or something, like it's out there. Like white people don't, like they just let soap run down their legs. Like, you see how ridiculous that sounds to you?
I had that's the first time
I know what you're saying. That is a thing. I didn't know that was a white thing.
I've heard I'm offended.
Exactly. There's this thing out there that here's another thing. I'm just gonna be straight up racist, right? That white people like when they get their hair wet, they smell like wet dogs. Like there's like their thing. Can I just lay it all out there? You see how ridiculous I sound with some of this stuff, right?
Right.
Let me get a piece of paper. Keep going. Let me write this.
Like, I mean, I know some white people hair who smell really good.
I like these.
I want to hear more of these.
The thing is, it was so funny when you said like you thought that it was over because Martin Luther King got his holiday. And stuff. That's why I was laughing. I thought that was the funniest crap I've ever heard in my life. I thought that was so funny.
I didn't think that, but I think there are people that kind of have that general.
Yeah, of course. I think this is the thing. Like
the question they ask is, what do you want? What can we give you to make you happy so we can all move forward? That's, I mean,
I think that you stop trying to stop acknowledging or stop ignoring the fact that racism exists, right? That's one thing the right can do, right? The left, the thing that gets Black people to the left is selling us on the idea that our race doesn't matter, right? That like we can be equal. On the right, they don't even address it, you know? And so like don't get me wrong. Nobody thinks that racism is going to be over just because you come up with some good ideas. Stop trying to solve racism. You can't solve it. It's an insolvable problem. It's insoluble problem. You can't do it. It's never going to happen because my cousins in South Carolina may think that white people don't wash themselves. Like they might think that. They might think that. And your cousins might think that the N-word is something that you have that's on a vocabulary spelling test in school. It's not. That's just the way it's gonna be. But the thing is,
do you want to hear one that I heard? This is real. When I moved, when I went to college in Rolla, and my parents moved into a subdivision outside of St. Louis called St. Clair Village. It's in Belleville, Illinois, and the person that maintained this, so the super, was a old white guy, and he told me in my living room that if you hit a Black person in their heel, that they will fall over and pass out. And I looked at him like I said, what? And he was serious. And I walked out of the room because I didn't want to upset my mother by correcting this guy. I didn't know what to do. I had to leave the room. That was a real thing. That's some straight up ignorance. My question is, how pervasive in the white community is that kind of nonsense? I can get a sense of how pervasive the ignorance in the Black community is by looking at Black Twitter. There's some outrageous shit out there about how white people are this and that and the other. And I know it's not true because guess what? I'm white. So I can dismiss a certain amount of that ignorance.
Here, if you want to know how idiotic it is, and
Pierre, you don't get to talk about Black Twitter. You don't do Black Twitter.
Right. I'm just a writer. So I do a lot of writing. So I do a lot of research. If you want to read something funny that's depressing, but it's funny at the same time, go to the site called the racial slur database.
Oh my God.
To me,
there are not any good names for white people. They're like, but they have a name for every other race out there. It's crazy.
Oh, you've been to the site.
Man, you know I have. We were on the way to we were driving down to Vegas, me and three other white Mexican dude and two other white dudes. Yeah, and we just somehow it got on this thing where they were looking up racial slurs or whatever, like, and there was like 1 million of them out there. It's crazy. And then like the one, like they had one for Jewish people. Like it was crazy. And you know, like there were no good ones for white people. You know, the H word and the, you know, that's not and cracker is not really a good one. But
Afro-Saxon.
They killed me with one, like one of the ones that I found ultra humorous. One was called what was it called? A smoke jumper, which was hilarious to me.
Yeah, I don't even understand what that is.
Like a white lady that only dates Black dudes, or the branch manager is like a pretty much up. Exactly. You know what that is, right? Yeah, that it was off the chain. It like
my new favorite is bird.
It was so bad I had to laugh at it. It was so bad I had to laugh at it. I was like, oh my God. And then I used it as reference in a screenplay.
We're about to give you a Brother and the Man exclusive again.
Oh, here we go.
Most Black people don't care about racist jokes as long as they're funny. Like they gotta be funny. Like they gotta be, I mean, like laughing hysterically funny. Like not a ha funny.
I think the fact that Chappelle Show was as successful as it was kind of proved that, at least when I was in high school.
I think that
it was huge. And that was all it was.
Your point is valid from earlier that there's a smell test, right? Context matters. Pierre said that we don't laugh enough at this stuff. There are people, we'll call it what it is, and I don't do it, so I get a pass, I hope. But there are people I know that I can drop the N-bomb with, and it would not be an ass kicking for Andy, right? So, but I know it has to be in context, and it's a limited audience.
Check those Chris Rock rules.
Well,
all of them better be in effect.
But
my
point is
be 5:22 a.m.
But the point is valid, though. Context matters. So
they're all white people. That's why.
So
that's why he gets away with it.
We spoke earlier about we talked earlier about a theoretical African American who might try to be a Republican and appeal to African Americans. All right, I got black skin. I'm a Republican. Let's deal with that. And you guys are going to look at him, and you're going to tell pretty quickly that he is or isn't an Uncle Tom. And you're looking for the one that isn't. But for far too many of them, they aren't. So a Colin Powell, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, a Condoleezza Rice might get a second look.
Condoleezza Rice?
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Depending on
Rice.
Depending on who Mexican dish, we should let the Mexicans eat her.
Depending on who you talk to, she either is or isn't a sellout. I don't know. I don't.
We are looking for that. I think black people are looking for that Republican that they could follow, that we could, that next person of color that we could follow. We're looking for anybody that we can follow, really, that might, have our best interests at heart.
Right.
I think that's like, we are in a very interesting place right now with Joe Biden becoming the president-elect, because he has very much an opportunity. But this is also an opportunity for Republicans to reset their line of thinking. And that's what we're taking this, we're looking at this okay, Republicans, okay, right, conservatives, take this loss, right, and reset your line of thinking, and do some actual outreach to the black community.
I get it.
Don't call it a platinum plan or anything that Jacob the jeweler could come up with. Don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, we know rappers will love it. We know those things, but the 90 to 95% of black people aren't listening to what Lil Wayne and Ice Cube and Diddy want. We don't give a care. We don't care. We want to deal. We most of us lie in the middle class area.
Where did Diddy come from? I thought Kanye was the guy.
Coming up with the Black Party, you'll be hearing about it soon, most likely.
Yeah, you'll be hearing about it soon.
I saw that.
I think conservatives need to differentiate themselves from the far right. I think that's the only chance they have. The far right MAGA people, they need to be pushed out, and I think the Republicans up top need to be very vocal about that. But I said they're cowards. They're not going to do it.
The problem is that
they're never going to get anyone from the left and the middle left until they do.
The problem is that this has been a problem for Republicans, or we'll call them conservatives, for a while, right? That they were already the argument that we need to open up the tent was something that Mitt Romney was dealing with, that John McCain, to be perfectly frank, dealt with. He didn't know how to deal with it properly, but it was something that he dealt with. People didn't show up to vote for him, especially given a Barack Obama who was motivating on the left. And that was a real problem with him. Trump, to his credit, I hate the guy, I especially hate him as a president, but to his credit, was able to blow up the definition of a Republican and reconstitute it to include other groups that weren't generally voting. People who are evangelical. Look, abortion is the worst thing in the world, and we need to codify things that will protect Christianity and those kinds of things, and protect Israel. The things that evangelicals find of extreme importance, he was able to go, you guys don't actually vote, do you? No, because we don't think either party is going to speak to us in any case. So we just stay home. Well, I will speak to you. I'm not really one of you. I'm going to take you for granted, but I'm going to have policies that you like. Okay, we're evangelicals. We will vote for you. Also, people in Branson and Reed Springs, Missouri, that are racist. Did you know that last president was black? I'm not black. Vote for me. And he built a new coalition out of shit kickers and racists and evangelicals and physical conservatives and Republicans that voted for him. So he was smart enough to reconstitute a further right base. And look, it clearly resonated. 71 out of 70. 146 million people voted, and 71 of those, something just under 50%, liked the guy for whatever reason. I have friends They didn't make it on the show. We tried hard, but it didn't work out. But I have friends who I like and that I guarantee you are not racist, who are very pro-Trump because they are wanting to get rid of the status quo at the governmental level. They
let us be the judge of
well,
that.
Yeah.
yes.
Come on, like
Yeah.
we have a 10 question racial quiz.
Yeah, we're gonna
Actually,
have a panel.
And that's part of my
Yes.
that's part of my concern is that we that things are so passionate that we get to a point where we can't be civil because, you know, a pro-Trump guy in this mix, I don't know how well that would go over. And then
well,
No, we could definitely be civil. Like,
yeah.
I don't think we can be civil, but once you start spouting off talking points, that's like, okay, you're beyond the pale. You're not trying to have a real conversation.
You can't.
I get that.
You can't come across and talk about Trump and talk about, well, he helped out in mass incarceration. Like that's a racist talking point. To mention mass incarceration or HBCUs is like, okay, who cares?
Could someone spout that talking point and believe it from a perspective of ignorance? You know it's racist, but they don't think it's racist. They genuinely.
I mean,
look,
racism.
I said earlier that
are they checking their sources?
Racism is 100% ignorance. That's absolutely racism. It's ignorance, and they're not willing to listen to reason. That's I've cut off all of my friends I grew up with for that exact reason.
And I wouldn't even go that far in having to do that, Wef. I just think I just think that like people are going to think what they think until they're educated otherwise, right? Like that person may not. Some of your friends that you don't believe are racist and that you quote unquote know that aren't racist could have racist tendencies, right? And so we're not here to accuse anybody of being racist until you show us that very thing.
Right. Because here's the thing, you could be ignorant, but then if you have the opportunity to be educated and you choose not to, well, then you're willingly selecting to be racist. You're willingly selecting to be ignorant. Racist. And at that point, I can't talk with you. We're not going to be civil. There's nothing that we can talk about.
Right. And I ask people all the time. I ask people online on Twitter, I say, so what parts of Trump are you supporting? And a lot of people do mention the economy. And I think the policies over the person, that's a fine, that's okay to an extent. Like at some point, like who are you following? Like what I looked at when it came to Trump wasn't necessarily whether or not he was a racist, because I just assumed that he was, being that he was white. So I'm just not gonna front. so, like you have to prove otherwise. Actually, no, I'm just kidding. So I looked at him as an opportunist, as I said before, and I didn't think he was really a conservative. I thought that he was more of a liberal person who masked himself as conservative for his own great opportunity. And so, like when somebody says, "Well, I voted for Trump because of this particular policy," and I'll say, "Okay, but you're supporting somebody who isn't a good person, right?" I just use a baseline barometer in terms of Trump. Is he a good person? Obviously, there were people who weren't really good people that have been president, obviously, who I would never be friends with or whatever. I'm not looking for a friend in that sense, but I am looking for somebody who will, like, you can be a CEO of a company and I not like you, but you can represent that company to the best of your ability. And that's not something that Trump did as the CEO of this country. He did not represent America to the best of his ability. He did it his own way. He was Frank Sinatra in that sense. And he did it his way.
Not in a good way.
Right. Not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
I think that look, again, Jeff will tell you I'm naive, maybe. And you might all say I'm naive, but I think that I hope that people that are pro-Trump, especially the second time, how do I say this? I think that there are people, man, I can't make it. It's hard to come up with an excuse. I have neighbors all around me that are pro-Trump, and they're not, as near as I can tell, most of them bad people. I think that most of them are operating from a point of fear, and they have things that they don't agree with. And again,
scared of though.
That's our question.
I'll illuminate, and you're going to say that they're wrong for doing this, and I agree with you. But for example, there are people that are Blue Lives Matter instead of Black Lives Matter, and they're afraid of that. There are people that are afraid of the rhetoric of defund the police, whatever that means. There are people who are afraid of the idea that taxes are going to go up. There are people that are afraid of the general vague concept of socialism. There are people that are afraid. There are people afraid of this and that and the other. They like what they know. And I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around, because for me, and I go back to the core value that I've been saying for 6 months is I don't care, to a certain degree, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about any of those things, because my number one singular, my mother votes abortion. She thinks abortion is terrible. She's going to vote for Trump because he's anti-abortion, or he says he is. So
I guarantee he's not anti-abortion.
But that's beside the point. To my mother's perspective, he is. So my mother is going to vote for Trump because he's more likely to appoint conservative judges to the Supreme Court. Look at the scoreboard. She got what she wanted. Roe v. Wade is vulnerable at this point. She got what she wanted. She voted her interest, and I'm disappointed in that. But there's that. But for me, Trump was, and we're wrapping up the whole show here because we're coming back to our core original statement. Trump was singularly flawed. I'm interested in someone in the White House who can be presidential. I'm interested in someone who's not going to go on a trade war with China and fuck up our economy because he thinks he knows how things work and then loses and then goes, oh, well, let's move on to something else because this failed. I'm interested in someone who's not going to have a temper tantrum and launch a nuclear attack against some third world power. This guy's in charge of the nuclear football. I need him not to be in the White House. Then all of this can be discussed, which is what we spent the last 2 hours doing.
Right. I don't think. See, I guess the whole Trump thing mystifies me, because if they were looking at him from a business standpoint, he's a really good businessman. That part really mystifies me. He's filed for bankruptcy multiple times in his businesses. I mean, for whatever reason they were, but to a poor person like myself, bankruptcy means you ain't got no money.
See, I had that exact same argument with my dad, and his response was, "Well, so have I." That was all I got out of it. He was not willing to have the discussion at all.
Like I could file for bankruptcy right now and keep some assets, but it doesn't mean that ultimately you're telling a bank, by the way, I have no idea how to handle my money. I need you to give me a clean slate. I know my daddy gave me $10 million, but I blew it all on some hoes or something like that. And I just need a little bit of a loan. You know what I'm saying? Help a brother out. That student loan is.
I'll be honest. I'm trying really hard. I'm beginning to get frustrated with myself. I'm trying really hard to reach across to Trump fans and I guess I'm trying to apologize for them. And I speak to these people, and look, I can say this, and you guys you'll test them if they come on here.
Okay.
But I don't think that they're racist. And I know that they're not racist in the sense of, oh, there's a black person in the room, I got to walk out. So maybe you'll say that their policies and their pursuits and their beliefs are detrimental to African Americans, therefore racist or privileged. But I don't think that they hate you because you have black skin racist. Okay.
Well,
I think that
could be for a couple of reasons though.
But to get to my point is that I can think of 2 or 3 people who are pro-Trump, and I ask them, or they tell the room, because I don't generally ask, but they tell the room why they're interested. We have a cousin who is interested in Trump because he tells it like it is, and he's not a career politician. But then I say, we've just watched him 4 years be more political and more he was going to drain the swamp. This is the swampiest motherfucker we've ever seen. I can't get good with that. Maybe you believed that 4 years ago, but how do you believe that still? The other guy says, well, he's going to blow up. This was a specific term. He's going to blow up the status quo and come in as a billionaire. A billionaire is the only person who can rise above the apparatus and correct things and blow it all up and make it better. But he clearly didn't do that. Again, he was a political monster. I don't. You know what? If you're pro-Trump, let me say this. If you're watching this and you're my friend and you're pro-Trump, I love you as a neighbor. I don't know how you're pro-Trump. I just can't get good with that. I'm out. I tried, and the more I do it, the worse I feel. I feel
ignorance.
I feel dirty.
I'm not reaching across and apologizing for that, and not out of spite or anything like that. Here's the reason why. Whoever you want to support, you can support.
Absolutely.
It's easy for you to say things like, they're not racist. They supported Trump for this reason. Totally fine. They may be fine with me sitting down and coming into a room and, oh my gosh, I got to pick my white woman up, carry her over my shoulder, and get her out. A Negro just entered the place, right? They may not do that, right? But where there were a lot of people that weren't like that until 2008, until Barack Obama got elected president. When it was the idea of a black man in power, that's when people lost their shit, and that carried over. So
wait till Kamala goes
you
for
may
president.
not be an overt racist until like you start black people start getting out of line and start doing things that you were told for years down in Branson or wherever that black people couldn't do. That's where things started becoming an issue. So
I agree.
If you voted for Trump, you voted for Trump. That's on you. I don't as long as you don't do anything to me, I got no issue with you. We don't even have to discuss why you voted for Trump unless that's what you want to do, or you're trying to turn the spotlight on me when it's like, okay, your stuff's kind of grimy itself. So, that's how I look at it.
So how many Marvel fans on this panel right now? We got Marvel fans. Pierre, I know you and your son, you love some Marvel. Racist people are like mutants or inhumans, right? They're not really racist until something happens in their life, and all of a sudden their racist ability comes out. Like their racist mutant power comes out, right? Like Wolverine had healing power his whole life, and all of a sudden he became racist Weapon X because of some adamantium, right? He was the only one that could have it. Like, so racism is like it's not inherent in people, but a lot of times it comes with the teaching and then the inherent things that come, that have to happen in their life for that racism to come out. So like those Trump supporters that you're talking about, they may not be, overtly racist as the way Trump was, but they may also have some stereotypical things about them that are racial, are racist type, and so like it may take someone like me or Pierre to bring out their mutant power in order for them to like be full on racist. I'm just keeping it raw.
No, I get it. It's that they're not. It's right. So there's so many variations of the broad term racism. My grandfather. How do I say this? My mother's father told a joke back in the 80s about AIDS. He said that when AIDS was announced, that all the black people went and signed up for it because they thought it was welfare. It was racist, but this is the same guy that marched with my dad against race-based stereotyping and race-based stereotyping. He was somewhere between this definition of racism and that definition of racism. And it was alarming to me. And I was greatly offended because he was a great man and I loved him. And I was sad when he died, but he made that joke. And I can't ever get past the fact that he made that joke. And they all laughed. My dad laughed. My dad marched and got clubbed marching with his friends. He was a career military, but he laughed at the joke. We've all laughed at the joke that was inappropriate, some joke that was inappropriate. We're all racist in some way. But there are people that I go back to, again, this is 12 years ago. Hey, I have no problem with black people. Oh, we have a black president and he wants to raise taxes. I'm a tax revolt. I'm Tea Party because I don't want to see him raise taxes. But also, where's his birth certificate? How do we know that he should be president? Where the fuck does that come from? You never called for the birth certificate for John McCain, who was born in Panama, but you're concerned about the guy that was born in Hawaii. You need proof that he was born an American citizen. And the only thing I can come up with, and Pierre and I discussed this on the podcast a decade ago, was it has to be based upon some fundamental. I have to vet black people differently than I vet white people.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely comes from, like, I think that the lack of acknowledgement of those things. Like, I feel like in terms of the election, like going back to speaking of the elections, white folks tend to forget that they were passing out literacy tests in order to let black people vote. Like that's like a forgotten thing. Like that vote, like they're acting like voter suppression came up 2 years ago. It's no,
and
it didn't.
We've got
did it.
very clear voter suppression, not targeted specifically at black people, but practically at black people right now.
Right.
Hey, we should get rid of people who voted by mail. Well, African Americans voted by mail largely because you know what? They have a brain in their fucking head and they don't want to get COVID. And it's legal.
We can read now, boss.
Yes. Like they can't take this ballot away from me if I mailed it in. They don't know who it came from. Like my name is Jason. That's not a black name. If my name is Rashad, though, I might be a little concerned. Like I'm just saying, it just stop. They just got to stop acting like, especially conservatives. Like conservatives were cool with everything that happened, especially the Electoral College, until it didn't work for them. Same with the left too. They're concerned. The left is like, oh, we should just get rid of it because he wasn't a popular vote. So what? So what? If work within the system, if this is what the system is, until it gets changed, and stop complaining about those things, and stop going up to the pollsters place where they're counting the votes and saying, well, this can't be fair. There aren't Democrats and Republicans up there. It's all bipartisan. Like if you have a Republican Secretary of State within that state who handles all that stuff, then of course, why wouldn't it be bipartisan? It wouldn't benefit that person for it to not be bipartisan.
I don't want to hear, and we need to wrap this up, I'm afraid, but I'm not trying to hear anybody, especially on the left, talk to me about the flaws of the Electoral College. We have yet to get into that on this vidcast, and it's a hot button issue that I've been pushing that I want to discuss, but we haven't discussed it. But I don't want to hear about anybody on the left say the Electoral College is a flawed system. We need to get rid of it, because in 2000, a man who was not liberal, not a Democrat, was elected without the support of the popular vote. And 8 years later, Barack Obama had the largest mandate in a generation and both houses of Congress. He could have made an effort to move against the Electoral College, and it was never brought up. Both of these groups like the Electoral College because they can manipulate it and use it in certain scenarios that favor them. I hate the Electoral College. I was a big fan of it in college. When I went to college, I wrote a paper in favor of it based upon the idea that the Electoral College would save us from some theoretical Ross Perot. Donald Trump is the biggest Ross Perot in a generation, and the Electoral College did not save us from him. Those electors did not rebel and go, this guy's wackadoodle fucking crazy. Let's write in a different Republican that's a little less wackadoodle crazy and give the party, but a different candidate the win. That would have been Hamilton's manifestation of what the Electoral College was for. When that didn't happen, the Electoral College is vestigial. It's confusing. It doesn't represent the will of the people. We should get rid of it. If I was elected dictator for 6 months, that'd be the first thing that would go. But black people on the left, Democrats, didn't do anything, or at least there was no substantial effort to get rid of it. So it is what it is. And for the benefit of the doubt, thank God, because now we have Biden. But 4 years ago, we got Trump. It's a flawed fucking system.
Good show.
Harumph. Let's say this. Let's end on this. Let's go back to our original point, and say Joe Biden is elected president-elect. We don't know what Donald Trump is going to do on the way out. He could leave quietly. He could try to burn the fucking White House down. I don't know. Part of me hopes he is
going to take all the toilet seats.
Part of me hopes he's diplomatic. Part of me hopes it's a shit show and we get to watch this guy be an embarrassment.
Upper deckers in every bathroom.
But the reason that we're recording, it's 11:30 Central Time, 10:30 Mountain Time, and we've been on the air for going on 3 hours. We waited until after Vice President Kamala Harris and Vice President-elect and President-elect Joe Biden spoke, pretty much at the assistance of Pierre. And when he spoke, I think he was uniquely eloquent. We have an opportunity here, all of us, to be Americans again. We have a moderate, which means in the middle, who can reach across all the aisles. He has experience with Republicans. He's good friends with Mitch McConnell on the back end. He can negotiate. He has an African American as his running mate. He has a woman as his running mate. He has the possibility to make this country better than what it has been for the last 4 years. He said this earlier. We will not only lead by example of our power, but the power of our example. I'm hoping that this is a good. Why, Jason? Why are you laughing? I'm hoping that this is a moment. I'm hoping this is a moment, and I'm hoping that this is a great day, and I hope I'm not wrong. What do you think?
I will say this: Joe Biden has a chance to make America great again. I'm out, y'all.
I agree. I agree. I think that this is the prime opportunity to for the country to show up in a way that it hasn't shown up in a couple of years, and for us to be on good footing for a change. Like let's take it. Now that we're back to the president not tweeting every single day.
It's become such a standard that I don't know what will happen when he's not doing that.
It's horrible. I don't need to know. And other countries can see it. That's a problem. So, like now that we're back to the regular normal that was before he got into office, let's kind of get back to fixing some of the issues that are within the country, like coronavirus. It's a big thing. Let's get the kids back to school however we can, and let's be safe and let's be unified in a way that we haven't.
I think he's exactly what we need right now, and I hope people can see that, especially in 4 and 8 years. And I hope this isn't just a brief lull before another shitstorm. But I'm gonna.
He's like the Dark Knight.
I'm gonna hope we get more of this in the future and not what we've had.
So Pierre just said something that I think is actually resonant, and I had not thought about. He said, "Let's make America great again." I think from that perspective, and we'll end on this. I think he's already succeeded. Consider the shit show we've had for the last 4 years. This guy, just by showing up in the White House, and the other guy not, we're already better than we were.
He's definitely giving us a reprieve.
He could call it a day, and we would call it a success. Joe Biden, presuming he doesn't try to sell Mississippi to the Soviets, will already be a better president than Donald Trump.
Give him Florida.
He can sell Mississippi. He can take Alabama.
We'll take Puerto Rico. We'll trade Puerto Rico for Mississippi.
There we go. Straight up.
What the fuck?
That's some really good music. I'm telling you, some good food. Say it.
The problem with that concept is I have to go through Mississippi to get to Alabama.
Fair enough.
Give them Alabama too.
You're welcome in Alabama. You're good
Florida,
to go.
Alabama's a great state.
The only black people that are welcome in Mississippi are football players.
Andy, I gotta put these on so I can give you one of those.
When I went to Alabama,
Alabama's a great state.
When I went to Alabama
Jesus
on vacation, okay, we went to New Orleans, and then I went along the coast, right? So I arrive in Gulf Shores, and I thought I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting Alabama to be the most shit kicker, inbred Appalachian state in the entire union. It has that reputation. And what I found was a great little vacation spot where people didn't have accents, and the restaurants were great, and the beaches were fine. When we came back, I wanted to try, I have this thing, I have a map in my 4-year where I mark off states that both my wife and I have been to. And before I die, we want to hit all 50 states. So I try to hit states while I'm driving. So I wanted to get up to Georgia, up where Chattanooga is, and then swing through Tennessee and Kentucky so I could mark them off the map. So we went north through Kentucky, through Alabama. And what I found is that when I got into the middle, and the research sense is this is the area where the ground is not good. It's rocky and hilly. It was poor and it was black, and they were not happy to have me in their gas station. And then when I got to the north near Georgia, it was big open pine forests again, and everybody was white again. Alabama is one of the most fucked up states I've ever seen. Talk about divided. There's 3 states there. There's northern and southern Alabama, which are white, and middle Alabama, which is poor and black. That's the most divided. They talk about St. Louis being divided against itself based upon zip code. Alabama is 3 different states. It's amazing the progress we have yet to achieve in everybody being equal and comfortable with each other, which is the whole reason that Pierre and I created this podcast, so these conversations could happen. You know more about white people than you did before you came on the show, Jason. Admit that. And I guarantee you, Jeff knows more about black people. Jeff knows more about black people than when he came on this show. Tell me I'm wrong.
I learned a new term.
A lot of
What
white
was it?
folks.
Smoke jumper? Was that the term? That's the new thing I
Smoke jumper.
learned.
Oh my gosh.
Tell me I'm
Man,
wrong.
I'm learning a lot. I'll say that. I definitely grew up around with some white folks, but I probably am learning more about black people on the show than anything.
The thing I've
Like
learned
every time you
over-
say something like this, my blackness does not like this.
the thing I've learned over the last decade is that I am so happy I live where I do now compared to where I grew up. And it's not even that far away. That's all I got.
Okay.
I love the diversity. I do.
We have a good show. We have a diverse show.
Yeah.
We're split down the middle right now, so we're good there. No, excellent
Where
show.
are we split? Where are we in disagreement on any issue?
Well, I didn't say we're I didn't say about that. I'm talking we're split down the middle right
We're
now.
playing the race card.
As far as the racial demographic right now, we are split down the middle.
Playing the race card.
So we got-
No,
Well, I
hey.
don't know. Well, you actually threw Jeff out.
promoted
Though.
me earlier. I'm not white anymore.
Yeah,
got
he
Yeah,
the
threw you
That's the
out.
second time you've
Our
done that on
Rachel
your show.
I identify.
When we all dookie, doesn't it stink the same?
So now
I don't want to know
you're no
about
longer you're no longer Jeff Hinch. You're Jeff Jackson. So that
this. Yes, at least.
Guy
There
wearing
are
the
some-
smoky
hey,
J Dizzle from the
There are
booth.
some benefits, Jeff. There are some benefits.
Yes, you're Shamala Jackson now, and your wang is 4 times bigger. Congratulations.
I mean,
But your
I
wife is going to kick you out.
Probably. She's going to develop a limp.
You're immediately going to apply for unemployment.
get that aviation up in you. You'll be good.
Brother the Man
Good show.
live
Thank-
election
Thanks.
contemplation special. I think that it's episode 12 or 13. Nobody cares any fucking more. But here we are. Trump is on the
Why are
way
you so
out.
angry? Stop. Why are you so mad? Why are you mad? Stop
his
being
shtick.
mad.
Come on, I'm the angry white
that is
man.
your shtick. Yeah,
I'm the
you
gang.
got-
I'm the angry white man.
but
Because I
yet
bought
people
the
put
fucking
you
hat,
first
and these
when I
guys
walk
didn't
in.
do shit. That's why. I spent $30 on this hat. It showed up a week before the election,
$30
and then they didn't do anything. White Republicans didn't vote for Biden.
for $30. You could have got yourself a nice bottle of aviation spray.
I only
Hey, man.
drink that shit if it's got a celebrity's name on it because I want to be like Pierre. If Dan Aykroyd came out and said, "This is Dan Aykroyd's
Wait, he
Irish
got-
whiskey," he would be like, "Oh, let me spend $100 on that."
Well, that's
okay.
not that expensive. Dan Aykroyd's got some shit. I don't know what
He's
it
got
is.
some vodka. It comes in a skull and it tastes like potatoes. And I bet you got 2 bottles of it.
No, I don't have that. No.
All I know is that you guys got 4 more years to come up with the next version of the Antichrist. Now that Trump's out of office, so
It's all for you, Donald.
you should be excited
It's all
about
for
this.
you.
You can groom the next one.
Brother,
Look,
Brother,
man,
Mark-
people keep
mark the
tripping.
tape. Mark the tape. I keep using his name, Mark Cuban.
Mark
Hold the
Cuban.
tape. He's gonna be he may not get it, but he's gonna be on the stage at some point. You mark my words.
Look, if people keep tripping it like they've been doing, you're gonna have somebody like the Joker show up. So
Oh my gosh.
you better be okay with
Sorry,
it.
Robert
I
De
might be
Niro.
on board with it because some
Maybe just had
want to
that.
watch the world burn.
If I had to make a prediction right now in 2024, it'll be Ivanka Trump versus Joe Biden or
You think
Kamala
so?
Harris. Yeah, I absolutely do. 71 million people voted for this motherfucker. He ain't gonna run again, but his daughter will.
Ugh.
Well, it is what it is.
Well, she'd be
My
less
kids were
qualified
screaming
than her
at
father.
that idea.
I know. She'd be less qualified than her father, and he was pretty not qualified.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
But America will definitely believe everything she says.
She's
Half
white.
of them anyway. 49%.
Yeah. People
Good
love
show,
us.
gentlemen. Jeff, thanks for coming on. As
Yeah.
always,
Anytime.
Jason, great having you on. Glad you could make it. We should.
Yeah, but I gotta call people out. Where's Big Ass Craig? Where's Derek? Where's Amanda Hintz? Where's Dan Kesson? These people are giving me shade. They're not responding. I know where you live. I will come find you. You will be on the show.
Big Ass Craig kicked my ass last time I saw him.
Shots fired.
Right. You sure
It's on video.
We will have Craig on. You know what? I did not invite. I should have invited him because he was texting me earlier, and I didn't think about it. So we will get BAC on the show.
Big
Yeah,
Ass
it's gonna
Craig.
be my script. I gotta start learning my lines.
He doesn't have anything to say. He doesn't have a brain.
Mike Shaw couldn't make it. The wife and son are not feeling too well, and so he had to take care of them. So he couldn't make it.
The next episode, we're going to talk about COVID because COVID is everywhere. And we didn't talk about it, but there was a theory that COVID would go away when Biden got elected. Clearly, that's not going to be the case.
Who fucking said that?
Republicans
People didn't think it was real in the first place.
Republicans said that. Republicans,
those shit kickers I was talking about earlier.
The shit kickers, exactly right.
Yeah.
The idea is that COVID is a Chinese world conspiracy against Donald Trump, and that as soon as the election is over, for better or for worse, you will see the press stop amplifying its results.
Oh my God!
Unfortunately, 1,200 people died yesterday in the United States, and 120,000 people caught it. At this point, we're all going to have it because you can only, in 10 days, it's 1 million people. There's only 300 million of us. So
I had to get a COVID test yesterday, so I'll find out in a couple of days if I got it. Thanks, son, if you brought it home from school.
Anyway, we have plenty to talk about on the next episode, but I'm exhausted, and I still haven't watched SNL. We are
some humor in the next show or down the road. We're not always so serious. But it's
a serious time, but I agree. Let's do an episode where we talk about no politics, no black people, we only talk about white things that are benign.
We've been over this. Segregation didn't work. You can't leave out the black.
We talk about why women shouldn't have the vote.
I want to. You know what I want to talk about, and this came up on something. We should spin the wheel. We should do 12 topics on the wheel. We need to start introducing this damn wheel.
Dude, I've been asking. No, fuck you. You know what, Pierre? Fuck you.
We're going to do.
I asked you about wheel topics 3 months ago.
Dude, bitch, it's been goddamn fucking.
You haven't given me a single fucking suggestion.
Greatest white songs. That's what we're going to do.
Why is it got to be white songs? There are no great white songs.
Hey,
no, New Kids on the Block.
The greatest white song, Tutti Frutti on Rudy.
How many brothers
Pat Boone
on Eileen?
Tutti Frutti on Rudy by Pat Boone. The greatest white song of all time.
Sweet Caroline.
Sweet Caroline.
That might be on the list. That is
Sweet Home Alabama.
Ooh, that's even better. I like that.
Hey.
Every rose has its thorn.
Sweet Home Alabama.
What about New Kids on the Block or Backstreet Boys? I love them.
You love them. You're what's wrong with America.
I killed it in karaoke.
You did kill it at karaoke. I give you that.
Them white folks loved it. Them white folks was like, "This is my jam."
Then somebody took off their bloomers and threw them on stage.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Let me put these in my pocket." Hope my wife ain't watching.
I did the Fresh Prince theme at karaoke. Was that okay, or should I not?
Yeah, that's dope.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're black now, Jeff. Remember?
Exactly. Better Canadian.
We're going to peel down these walls of political correctness, and we're going to enjoy our jokes again. Make jokes.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen? We're going to do that, and then I'm going to say the N-word, and then it's going to be all over.
I was going to say that earlier. Donald Glover had a bit about that in his stand-up, that he thinks white people should be allowed to say the N-word. He said, "We're going to lose some of you along the way," but he did a whole bit about it. It was great.
It got to be funny.
Eddie just want to get it out. I want to say it about these people.
I could type it on the screen and not get in trouble.
Yeah, that'd be the end of the show.
Well,
we have an audience.
All right, Jason, thank you for joining us. Jeff, thank you for joining us. Tell Amanda that we miss her and we want her on the show. And if she's got a problem with me, she should text me.
It's not you.
Oh, it's clearly me. Who else could it be? She loves Pierre. And she's not going to be the token female.
I guess she met Pierre once.
Yeah, we met.
I think that's the thing. I think if, like, I don't know, Jen or whoever was on, I think she would be more apt to do it.
Oh, I got a topic. That you guys brought up a great topic. The secret love of black men by white women.
Let's talk about the secret love of white women by black men.
Exactly.
What about my obsession with
Interracial love.
my obsession with Nicki Minaj? We could do that.
Oh boy.
Man, you're weird.
Oh, this is going to be a great topic.
Surely, we're clearly thinking up some good stuff in our post. Now that we're past the election, whether who you voted
It's
for,
interesting.
in all seriousness, that's over with. And we want to get into the more other sides of the brother and the man show for our audience out there. We're not always so serious, and we want to get into this stuff.
I'm missing that. I want to talk about this. If you're a white man and you love a black woman, then from a certain perspective, that's racist. If you're a black man and you love white women, from a certain perspective, that's unacceptable. But if I'm a white man and I only love white women, that's also racist. Is there a correct answer that is not going to be offensive?
Not for white people. There is.
See, and that's why we voted for Trump, because we're fucked. We are the most oppressed community in America. The white male is damned no matter what we do, and it's not fair. And we're finally going to get somebody that's going to speak for us and stand up for us and get rid of that Kenyan guy.
Here's what we can do. Here's what we can do. You raise a good point. If we want to keep it along political lines, or along those lines, just to walk that fine line, but make it humorous, we should do a show based off of the different things that make people mad when someone dates a whatever different race. Like white women get upset when y'all white guys be messing with them Asian girls. So just
they totally do. Totally do.
I think that we should have a racism. We should have a racism jar, and every time we see ourselves doing something racist, we should put money in the jar, and we would raise a fortune. I was watching. I don't know if you guys know this. There's a show on PBS called Victoria. It's a PBS perspective of Queen Victoria. It's in season 3 on Amazon Prime, where we're streaming it, my wife and I. And she had an African-born princess who was her ward. Her community was wiped out, and she came from a country that I'd never heard of called Dahomey, Dahomey. And I said, Dahomey? It's racist. It has to be racist. Totally racist. But I said, I come from a country called Dahomey. And I looked it up. It's a real country, but it makes its own jokes. And so I'm racist. So I need to put $1 in some jar.
Yeah, you do that. But no, we got to get the wheel going. We're going to get this wheel going.
It's
Jason,
right
you will
there.
be back on the show. Jeff, you will be back on the show. We have to be on the show so we can explore these topics. And we're taking a long time wrapping up. So we need to wrap up.
All right. So we're at 3 hours, 1 minute and 15-ish seconds. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jeff. Good luck, Joe Biden. Donald Trump, please resign if you're watching this. We will not clown you if you take the grown-up way out. There's a window. Jump out it. Start running for the Potomac. No one will stop you. And then you can be the great white savior, and we'll all be happy to buy your book. Brother and the Man, season 1, episode, 13-ish, the live special. And, yeah, good show. Good luck. Great day.